Madam Mayor, it's 6 o'clock.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this Tuesday, July 16th, regular City Commission meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Mayor Pam Triolo,
Here.
Vice Mayor Andy Amoroso,
Here.
Commissioner Scott Maxwell,
Here.
Commissioner Omari Hardy,
Here.
Commissioner Herman Robinson.
Here.
Thank you.
If everyone would please rise for the invocation. Pastor Joan Leroy couldn't be here today, so I will say a quick prayer. Dear God, may our efforts be blessed with insight, guided by understanding and wisdom. We seek to serve with respect for all. May our personal faiths give us strength to act honestly and well in all matters before us. Amen.
Amen.
Commissioner Robinson, would you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mark.
Okay, we've got a packed house, so if you can squeeze in and make room for anyone, please do so. For anyone who hasn't been here before and wants to speak, there are blue cards in the back, and you can grab one of those and write on it. There's two things. If you want to speak on an item that is on the agenda, write that item number at the top right-hand corner of the card. And what it is that you want to speak on. If you'd like to speak about something that's not on the agenda, that would be public participation of non-agenda items or consent agenda items, and it's item 7 on the order. So make sure you put that number there, that you want to speak on some other matter. Your time will be limited to 3 minutes, and at 3 minutes, a buzzer will go off. A lot of times, especially if you're nervous, you won't hear the buzzer. So just know that I'm going to start to say things like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because I'm going to try to be as nice as possible, because we don't have the giant hook like they used to have in the old days that take you around from the podium. So so just know that it's just to make sure we've got a lot of people, and I'm sure a lot of people want to get up and talk, so we want to make sure we have enough time for everybody, okay? So just be patient. All right. And in the meantime, too, if you can keep noise down, also take a check on your cell phones, too, or any electronic devices, and make sure that they're turned in the off or just vibrate button, so you know that they're ringing, but everybody else doesn't. And if you, pardon me? It's a $10 charge to vibrate. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Moving on to our presentations. Let's see. Additions, deletions, reordering. Do we have anything, City Clerk?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, then we're going to move on to, we have no presentations today. We'll go right to the Commission Liaison reports and comments. I'd like to start down. Commissioner Robinson.
Just briefly, I want to thank the NAPC for putting on another fantastic 4th of July raft race, and Leisure Services for all the work they do to celebrate our birthday of the nation. And that's it.
Vice Mayor.
I have a long list, but I'm going to skip the list because I want to hear from all the people here tonight. I do want to mention happy birthday to our Vice Mayor Pro Tem Scott Maxwell. And thank you. And congratulations to Michael for becoming a grandfather.
Yeah, baby.
I want to thank everyone about the 4th of July, and to give some kudos to Commissioner Robinson. He was like one of the great minds in creating that raft race a long time ago. So we got to give props where props are due. So thank you for starting such an honorable and fun tradition here in our city. Thank you to everyone who came out for Mango Fest. That was terrific. We were at the Compass Ball. We were at, I'm trying to think, Scott, we got your birthday. Jack's 90th birthday. To everyone who came out to wish Jack, one of our great volunteers at the Visitor Center, a happy 90th birthday. That was sure a special day. So congratulations to him. And I'm going to report on this again because I know we've got a lot of people here. But next commission meeting, I'm going to present what I presented at the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And I don't know if anyone saw, but we got an award for the Climate Protection Awards at the U.S. Conference. And we didn't win the big.
We're going back.
We didn't win the big one, and in fact, they said when steps get moved in
Hawaii.
finishing this project and getting it moving on the right direction, they said they all were just going to bow down and just give it to us because they thought the project was so cool. Also for our solar farm and also for a lot of the different projects we've been doing around the city. So it was nice to be featured in a positive light, and I'll tell you more about it next time when I actually do the presentation. If anyone's interested in the Ocean Current Energy Project, the next time we have a meeting, I hope that the staff will let me put it on the agenda so that I can share it with the whole commission. So it'll be up to you guys. Thank you all very much. All right, we've got public I'm sorry.
We got two more.
Sorry. I went fast. Should I go at the end? You got me all stymied. Okay, please.
I don't have much. 4th of July was great. I just want to thank staff. Staff always does an amazing job. It's very difficult condition for staff to work in. It's as hot as it can possibly be in Florida. It's in the middle of the day. You know, when Commissioner Robinson co-founded that race, it was held at like 10 a.m. in the morning, I'm told. And so, you know, our race is held at about 1 in the afternoon. And so it's very, very taxing, and staff works really hard to make sure that it goes off without a hitch. So they deserve all the plaudits for that. And I'm excited to go again to Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council this month. Always very interesting stuff. Always come back with a lot of new information.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, thank you so much. I too want to echo my thanks again to Commissioner Robinson for having started such a great tradition here in the city of Lake Worth Beach. It is more fun, you know, next to the Christmas parade. I think it's probably our best event, and that's no slight to our street painting festival, but I mean, it's a good time, and thousands of people come out and enjoy themselves, and you know, the trash talking that goes on the week or so before is just unbelievable. It's uniquely Lake Worth, and I'm so proud of us for coming together as neighbors and neighborhoods to pull that off. So thank you again, Commissioner, and thank you, staff, and thank you all for being out there in that hot weather and getting on those rafts and getting wet and grungy and everything else. So thank you again.
Did you say weeks before of trash talk?
Oh, well,
Months before of trash talk.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much. All right, public participation of non-agenda items and consent agenda items. So here are, just make sure, okay. Okay, we've got it. First up, Alyssa Cadwallader. Please forgive me if I butcher your name. I don't mean to. Is that close? Alyssa?
I think she's coming.
Okay. Followed by Ricardo Zambrano, if you want to get on deck, and Ruth Babbitt after that.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Alyssa Cadwalder, and I am a Lake Worth resident. I also happen to be the chair of the Florida chapter of the Sierra Club, and I'm here tonight to speak about the solar moratorium. And I would like to encourage the commission, thank you for taking a moment to listen to me, to reconsider the moratorium on solar. As a matter of fact, I was here when on January 16th, 2018, this commission and Mayor Triolo signed a proclamation supporting 100% renewable energy in the city of Lake Worth. And I feel that this solar moratorium and the components that go along with it are taking a step back towards the city of Lake Worth being able to move towards 100% clean energy. I feel that the size and capacity restrictions on solar energy systems being allowed to be installed on private property are unfair and may possibly even be illegal. And we really, I mean, climate change is upon us. And you know what? We live here in South Florida. We see it more in South Florida than many other areas of the country. And it really would behoove us as a city to act on that. And I don't feel that this decision by the city is helping us move towards the goal of 100% clean energy or helping us address climate change in a way that we can in our city.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Ricardo Zambrano, followed by Ruth Babbitt. Ricardo? You'll be right after. You're on deck. I always announce who's on deck afterwards, so you can get ready.
Hi, thank you for having me. I've lived in Lake Worth for the last 24 years, and it seems like the city of Lake Worth Beach seems to be going backward. I think we used to be much more progressive. And this ban, this moratorium you have on it, I insist you remove it immediately. We're going backwards. We should be more progressive. We should be encouraging solar power. We should have rebates like FPNO does. We don't. I don't think we have those anymore. And I don't know why you inserted a 10 kilowatt maximum. I don't know if that applies to businesses too, commercial. Obviously, that's a very low limit for a commercial or business, 10 kilowatts, and there may be homes that may exceed that. So that may actually be illegal. I think the director at Liberty, he said some comments about the safety of customer-owned solar energy systems. That's completely false. We had our vendor install solar power. It was checked by inspections by the city. It's completely safe. Solar power, I've never heard of any incidences or accidents or fires due to solar power. But somebody that works for the city should not be making comments like that. And I'm sure you're gonna hear from experts much more than me about the safety of solar power. So I encourage you to get rid of this moratorium. I encourage you to get rid of this 10 kilowatt maximum. And there's this other stipulation about standing alone energy where you can't use battery operated. You can't have the battery backup if the power goes out. Again, I don't know where that's coming from. Thank you.
Ruth Babbitt, followed by Sarah Maliga.
Hi, I'm Ruth Babbitt. I lived in Lake Worth for 30 years, my very first meeting. This is not important, but it's important to me. I've lived here for 30 years. I've watched the pool come and the pool go and the pool come and the pool go. And it breaks my heart that I can't go swimming in the pool. I mean, it just kills me. And now I used to go up there to check on it. It was full with water and it would really, like, I'd almost cry. Look, I can cry now thinking about it. But now when I go up there, it's empty, which takes the sting away a little bit. But gosh, darn it, it's there. It's this beautiful, gigantic pool. And, maybe on the side, that little baby pool, put some, slides, whatever, like Lake Lytle has. Because I have to go to Lake Lytle, which is a madhouse. And I could walk to the pool, which is not a madhouse. So, and I'd be willing to pay a higher yearly fee or whatever, but it just is so there. And that's all I have.
Thank
Thanks.
you very much. Sarah Maliga, followed by Peggy Fisher.
Sarah Maliga and Company, 408 Southeast Street, Lake Worth Beach, Florida. I want to thank you, Madam Mayor and Commission. I would like to address the hiring freeze that is affecting our city in regards to code enforcement and leisure services. We, the residents, are entitled to a certain quality of life as taxpayers that fund this city. This great city of Lake Worth Beach. Currently, we are discussing ADUs and a way to increase the population to help support the businesses that we do have in the downtown area. But let us take a step away from that. When you are looking to move into a new area, there are a few things that you look at as a priority list. If you have children, look at the quality of the schools. If you have children, you look for the quality of schools. You look for the services that are offered recreationally, in addition to any signs of blight or crime and the potential for your home value to increase. We are failing at shining when being looked upon. We continue to strip items away, such as having a pool, a softball league, and a t-ball league. We've outsourced soccer teams and football teams. Do you think that a monthly block party and a rec to go is suffice enough as a leisure services to the residents of this city and to bring more people to buy here? Why are we placing a freeze on leisure services when we are selling the building that those employed in that department work in? What are we going to do with that money? Where are those funds going? Code enforcement. During the election in 2018, we heard how all who were looking to be reelected gave glowing reviews on what they've done in the code enforcement department. Now you sit back idly while it gets cut and no one's talking about it. We had 11 code enforcement officers 2 years ago. We moved that up to 14. We are now back down to 11 with no hopes of hiring in the near future because of this freeze. 3 months ago, the city had an ad on LinkedIn, an advertisement on LinkedIn, offering $20.04 for new hires. How can we have the money 3 months ago but not now? Where has the money gone? How is that a fiscally responsible agency? Commissioner Hardy had fought hard for funding to come from the CDBG funds to cover 2 code enforcement officers. If not for that funding, we would be down to 2 less officers. I urge the city to apply for those same funds for 2020 and 2021. Cutting code affects the entire city, as I previously mentioned, as it detours new homeowners and businesses, but it greatly affects Whispering Palms, Royal Point Sienna, Tropical Ridge, and Sunset Ridge. Here are just a few pictures that I took today in a 7-mile square radius. If you could pass these down, Mr. City Manager. You will see cars parked in alleys that are filled with debris that don't have license plates. You will see homes that have boards on windows that have people living in them, which is a safety hazard. You will see overgrown yards where you can't even see the address of the front porch. And we want to cut code enforcement? Cutting code affects the entire city. The city has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars over the last 24 months on such things as great parking studies, new marketing materials for businesses and for business owners to come into the city. We're working on rebranding. Why would we choose to use those? Why would we use those budget funds for these items instead of code?
Thank you.
The communication from the city to the residents needs to improve drastically.
Thank
These
you.
are important issues that I will not talk, that you all talk about during election, but what do you plan on doing about it now?
Thank you. Peggy Fisher, followed by the Ambassador Ron Hensley, Assistant Ambassador.
Peggy Fisher, 508 North A Street. You're over capacity per the fire marshal in this room. You need to address the hazard to the public of not having egress out the back of this room. And that needs to be addressed anytime you have a meeting like this. And you all need, that's your responsibility. So now I'll start with my comments. At the last meeting, 2 commissioners said that they talked to staff and talked about subjects and had that ability to communicate with staff. One commissioner said he was told he could only talk to the city manager and the assistant city manager. That's unacceptable. If one commissioner can talk to staff, every one of the commissioners, elected commissioners in this city can talk to staff. There's not a preference of who can and who can't. You were elected by the citizens, many of whom are in this room, to represent us. So I don't want this to hear again about one commissioner who represents a particular district cannot talk to staff if someone else can. That just is unacceptable. I don't know about anybody else, but to me it's unacceptable. Or we can go back to nobody can talk to staff. So along the same lines, before the recent election in March, there was a item brought up to put onto the agenda and consensus among all of you to put this on the agenda for a review of the city manager. I remember the comment being made, there's no reason to wait until after the election. We should do it, just put it on the agenda now. Miraculously, it disappeared from the agenda and has never been done. All of you get a review by whether or not you get reelected or not. So I don't think there's anyone in this city who should be above getting a review by their supervisors. And you all are the supervisors of the city attorney, the internal auditor, and the city manager, and that should be back on the agenda. Thank you.
Do we have any city managers? Do we have to address anything here in regards to the amount of people?
The sheriff is supposed to be taking care of that, so
Okay.
I don't know if they.
Calling the sheriff. Would you mind taking care of
The
that?
sheriff should be sitting right there. Who's Alan's?
I
Alan's the
contacted Todd, and Todd told me he was coming.
You guys here?
Would be here.
sheriff. They're busy.
Okay, go ahead.
In the meantime, go ahead, Mr. Hensley. And Claire Miller, you're on deck. Claire Miller, you're on deck after Mr. Hensley. Thank you.
Please speak into the microphone.
If everyone would please quiet down too, we've got someone at the podium. Thank you.
My name is Ronald Hensley, and I'm the Assistant Ambassador to Lake Worth. And I've got a couple of issues here that, first thing I'd like to say is what's wrong with this city? I said, it's pretty sad that when an ambassador of this city, the assistant ambassador of the city, can go into code office and I am told to leave, and I'm threatened with police. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit nervous here.
It's okay. You're okay.
Okay, I go into code offices, code management is, and I'm lied to, then threatened with police and asked to leave. As management is running out the back door. I know this because she was seen. Not the first time either. She avoids us at me and the ambassador at any cost. Residents are taking city property, streets for themselves, and codes, streets, department, and some BBSO officers are allowing this to happen. I have watched plenty of times as we have neighbors, citizens who are taking this over. They're taking where it should be a sidewalk, it is now a private garden in front. That should not be the way it should be going on in the city. And another thing I'd like to mention also is the simple fact that I witnessed here in Magistrate last week alone that there was a citizen who was disabled and handicapped at the same time. And they were laughed at and belittled by code enforcement and code management. And I said, as I will look back and I watch the other code officers sit there and look in disbelief at what their officers was doing that is above them, I could see they didn't believe it themselves. It's ridiculous. That is not to be happening to any handicap or anybody who is under any circumstances disabled. We have been trying to get an ADA pad, a yellow ADA pad put down on 8th Avenue North, which is now a greenway. We can't get that. We was promised a driveway we never received. And now we have been inflicted with code management because of lies and threats. And all of it is disrespectful to me, disrespectful to the citizens, and it is disrespectful to the handicapped and disabled and the elderly. And this needs to get stopped. Management needs to go if they cannot do this themselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Claire Miller, followed by Brock Grill.
Hi, I'm Claire Miller, and I'm at 211 South J Street. I'm here to discuss the issue about ADUs.
Oh, that actually is later.
I know, I didn't realize that it was on that. Should I wait and comment then?
Yeah, I move your card up to the later discussion, yeah.
Okay. I'd just like to say I want to see the pool open.
Okay, there you go. Yay. Brock Grill, followed by Justin Hoisrack. And please, if you can just state your address too when you get up there. I forgot to reiterate that before. I've got it written down on the cards though.
Brock Grill, my address is 174 Vassar Drive, Lake Worth. I'm a member of the Planning and Zoning Board for the City of Lake Worth, and I'm here because of the solar moratorium and the solar agreement that was sent to me by Mr. Bornstein. I consider it to have numerous pieces of requirements, documentation in it that are really onerous. A few I want to point out, and I'm going to reiterate a little bit of what the Sierra Club member already said. 10 kilowatts is a joke for a solar system. My home is 1,900 square feet. I have a 4.7 kilowatt system. For a commercial business, it's utterly ridiculous. You also have requirements in your statement now saying that we have to have 90% of our usage. That is an incredibly difficult number to hit. You can't just walk out and hit 90% of your utility bill when you're installing solar. Again, very onerous, seems a bit ridiculous. There are also stipulations about the amount, the percentage of the city's total power that can come from solar. This is an extremely concerning provision in a document like that. It suggests the city is only open to a maximum of 1.5% of the city's electricity coming from solar. So while you've been given awards And while we're talking about some solar farm, that is a very low number and very concerning. The only thing I have left to say is, yes, I have a solar system on my home. Yes, it was grandfathered in. It's the best thing I ever did. Let's be the city of Lake Worth. Let's be better than some of the cities around here. Let's have a better policy. Let's be more open-minded about this. And I think it is ridiculous that we would have heavy restrictions like this when we don't even have a problem yet. There are 80 or so residences / businesses in Lake Worth that have solar. Why are we coming in with heavy-handed restrictions and aggressively, putting caps and limits on things with so little invested already? Let the people of Lake Worth invest. This is America. Let's have some capitalism. Let's have some democracy. Okay? This is a ridiculous policy. Ridiculous policy. I would like to see it go. I consider it to be very much a question of what it means to be someone who lives in Lake Worth. If the city is really about dealing with climate change, really about environmentally friendly energy policy, let's cut the garbage with stuff like this and come up with something that's really legitimate. And when you have 50% of the city's power coming from solar, rooftop solar installations, then we can maybe talk about taxes or fees or levies, no problem, right? I'm happy to pay them. But now, 80 residences, maybe 84, very foolish. Looks like the solar moratorium, which I know by state law you have to do now and deal with, well, you were in violation of state law, and I understand it needs to be rectified, but now you're implementing policy that looks like you're attempting to squelch solar in the city.
Justin? Followed by Michael Flackfox.
All right.
Your address too, please.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening. My name is Justin Hoysrad. I live in West Palm Beach, 333 Fern Street. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Commissioners, and a lot of the public. Super. Really excited to see some of my customers here talking to, which is really cool. Normally, in the past, I've been up here discussing items about solar energy with you as a contractor who serves the customers in Lake Worth Beach and is currently banned from conducting business at this time. However, tonight, I am here not as a contractor, but representing the members of the Florida Solar Energy Industries Association, or FLSIA, as its elected vice president. In a written letter to the commission and the city manager, FLSIA has provided views regarding the recent and continued, likely illegal, ban on net metering and the approval of a new, equally likely illegal interconnection agreement. To be clear, as Brock had stated previously, Florida statutes provide Floridians with the rights to generate some or all of their energy using customer-sited renewable energy through net metering and requires utilities to adopt standard interconnection agreements. We believe that the continued ban on solar and the interconnection agreement willfully violate the statute. With this, our members are negatively financially affected by the inability to conduct business in Lake Worth Beach. Additionally, in return, members of the community are negatively financially impacted each day this ban continues and unfair rules are maintained. Lake Worth Beach residents are denied access to tens of thousands of dollars that could otherwise be used in federal tax incentives in the city in investment. While the city may have been previously operating negligently out of its own compliance, which we determined, it had not restricted its residents to invest in clean, affordable solar energy. The city followed reasonable process to ensure that safety of the installations was acceptable by the local building departments and building authority here locally and in Palm Beach County. And the utility was also involved in that process. Now, under this ban, Lake Worth Beach residents have to look across the street at FPL-served homes and businesses that not only benefit from lower rates, but also have more choices. It's regressive that while FPL is committing to 30 million solar panels by 2030, Lake Worth Beach has banned them. While FPL is hardening the grid for their customers and allows access to advanced battery storage to keep the lights on when there is an outage, Lake Worth Beach residents are at risk of sitting in the dark this hurricane season because their commission has been persuaded.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Let's not leave the citizens of Lake Worth Beach in the dark. Let the sun shine in.
Michael Flack Fox. Michael Fox. Okay. Michael Flack Fox, last call.
In the hall.
He was in the hall.
Is he coming? Okay. Any more public comment cards on non?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And I would like to just take a mayor's privilege to remind everybody that we have an electric utility advisory board meeting that's going to be coming up
On the 23rd.
on the 23rd, where this is going to be discussed. No decisions have been made, and some of the information was erroneous that was given in public testimony, but I'm not going to get into it now, but come to that meeting, discuss that with the Electric Utility Advisory Board. You still have the ability to put your 2 cents in. In regards to it, nothing has been voted on and nothing has been decided. So I just want to make sure that I erase that from people's minds, as again, it hasn't come before the commission and we haven't voted on it yet. So thank you very much. Working on our next item, which is approval of the minutes. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by the Vice Mayor Pro Tem. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by the Vice Mayor. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by the Vice Mayor Pro Tem. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by the Vice Mayor. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item 10, public hearings, resolution number 33-2019, issuance of a revocable permit on the property located at 1005 North C Street.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, okay. We've got any information about it? Okay. Got a motion on the floor and a second. Are there any public comment cards?
No, Madam Mayor.
Seeing there are none, all those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 10B, resolution number 34-2019, adopting the final assessment roll for non-ad valorem assessments levied by chronic nuisance services and directing that such final assessment roll be certified to the Palm Beach County Tax Collector.
So moved.
Moved by the Vice Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Commissioner Hardy. We have an item, a comment card from Alan Menster. Please come and join us at the podium and just state your address for the record, please.
Alan Menser, 6717 Green Acres. With regards to the property at 637 Washington Avenue, there was a string of emails which I do have from the code officer just prior to Christmas. I did not receive a reply for him until after New Year's. I also have a picture of what the lot looked like. And then the very next day, he had a cleaning crew come out. So I'd asked for an extension of time through the holidays, and that was not granted. And the very next day, he said, oh, no, you're still in violation, and here's a $2,200 bill. So a couple things. One, there's no breakdown in the bill as to how many hours, what are the dump fees, etc. So I'd like to see that breakdown from the contractor. And number two, I think the code enforcement officer was a little too aggressive, not allowing any additional time, and then not taking into consideration the picture that I had submitted to him on email. So
Do you have a copy of that picture?
I do.
In the meantime, Mr. Stivers, do you want to give staff response to? It's the only
I have not
question.
looked specifically into this case. This one?
No.
Yeah, introduce yourself.
I'll just talk loud. Mark Stivers, Deputy Director for Community Sustainability. Without looking into the specifics of this case, I couldn't really respond to it at this time, but I'd be glad to meet with him after the meeting and discuss it.
And I'd be happy if the city commission would just table this specific issue until we can get that worked out.
We're on a timeline to get that done.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, City Attorney, I don't want to step over the line. so
Right.
no.
My suggestion might be if you're inclined to approve this with all these other properties with an understanding that Mr. Stivers can meet with the gentleman, and if they resolve it, can bring it back at the next meeting to take it off the list. But I think there is a deadline to get it on the list. So I'm not sure that if you don't act today, you can, all these properties get affected.
Okay, I understand. Commissioner
I'm
Hardy?
fine with that.
So amended. So that's a subsidiary motion to amend.
He's not asking, he's asking us to approve it as is and then come back and amend it should they come to some sort of agreement.
My understanding was that he asked us to approve it with the understanding that.
Right, so approve it, if you're inclined to approve it, approve the list with the understanding that if Mr. Stivers and the gentleman meet and decide, and the staff recommends that it should be removed, that it'll come back at the next meeting to be removed from the list.
So how would one do that? Is it,
If that sounded fine, you can make that as the motion. I don't know if I could say it again.
that's why I said so amended.
So you don't have to amend you do have to amend the motion.
Who made the motion already?
The original motion was made and seconded
Okay.
to accept it as is. So you accept it as is,
You're
you
okay.
vote on it as is, and then you
You're
would come
okay
back
with
and
that?
change it? Or
No.
you have to accept it and.
Can I ask
Best we
Mr.
can do.
Did you want to accept that friendly amendment to your?
That's highly irregular.
It is highly
I
irregular.
mean, I don't know the case and the timeline involved here. It seems like this should have been dealt with prior to tonight. So, I don't want to set a precedent. Is there an easier way to get out of this? By the way, this mic's hot. I'm just, I'm just saying, it's echoing in my ears.
Like a running joke.
That's better.
And that's your other option. If you approve it as is, then this will get recorded, and the city would go ahead and release the lien, almost simultaneously if they come to an agreement and come to your next meeting, and it could be released.
If there's an agreement reached, if we leave it as is, if the agreement's reached, we're going to take it off the roll anyway. Yes?
Yes.
You either take it off the roll or you
So you don't have
file
to
a release
amend the
lien
motion. If
immediately.
it's going to be fixed, it's going to be fixed. We're not going to turn it over to the tax
It'll
assessor.
just come back to us. Okay, we've got a motion on the floor in a second. I'm sorry, Commissioner Hardy, do you have a hand? All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. It can be replaced. Thank you. All right, moving on to resolution number 35-2019, abandonment of public right-of-way between 502 and 432 North Lakeside Drive.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Mayor Pro Tem. Do I have a second? Second. Okay. We've got some public comment cards. Lori Whitkin, followed by Tammy Panza.
Speak up really clearly, because in the hallway they might not be able to hear you, Madam Mayor, please.
Sure, Lori Whitkin. Hi. Good dress.
Lori Whitkin, 1008 North Lakeside Drive.
So you gotta,
Oh, is that better now?
yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, basically, I'm just not in favor of the city giving away property, but especially right on the golf course and by the waterfront. The neighborhood that it's in, which is also the neighborhood I live in, we don't really have any open space or parks or anything. There's the golf course, but unless you're golfing, that really doesn't do you any good. And even though it's a small piece of land, it could be access to the golf course, it could be a pocket park one day. And I just don't think the city should get rid of it. I know we can't charge for it. And it just seems like it's a bonus to whoever lives there. And I think the city should hold on to it. I don't see where there's a problem with it. I mean, the person who lives there is still able to use it to get into his driveway and whatnot. So I see no reason, because once it's gone, it's gone. And I know there was a movement, several years ago that not to give land away anymore and to cancel the revocable permits. And I think we should go back to that theory and hold on to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Tammy Panza? Yeah, can you bring that up? So I'm looking for. What is it? 502 and 432.
So, Madam Mayor, if I may, this,
You know what, I have one more public comment card, and then we'll go to you. Thank you. Ms. Panza?
She was in the hallway.
She wants you to read yours, Madam.
40 feet of land list in Parrot Cove has a value. If you are going to abandon, please don't just give it away. Thank you. Mr. Stivers?
the property in question is the one in red on the map. It doesn't directly currently provide access to the golf course. The property to the south, 432 North Lakeside, they have a driveway permit on top of that land currently. 502 North Lakeside has a revocable permit across it, and their fence runs to what would be the center line of the street. So going down the street, you wouldn't know that this is even a public road. It looks like the two properties that are there.
Can you zoom in on it a little bit? Is it possible?
I can pull it up on Google Maps. That's a static image.
Yeah, that's not going to be possible. While he's chasing that down, I want to clarify a couple of things that may not be evident. On rights of way that the city controls, we don't own it like property. It's kept in your ownership class for the perpetual use of the public. So it's not a piece of property that has a value that you can sell. You only have the ability per state law to abandon it, and it splits 50-50 to the adjoining property owners. So there seems to be some confusion about rights of way and that ownership like property. The city doesn't technically own it like a piece of property, if that makes sense. And there he is.
So that's what it looks like currently. There's driveways on this side, and then there's a fence line right here for, this is 502, this is 432. So it's not currently access to the golf course. We talked with the golf course, we talked with the city manager, assistant city manager. The only use the public has currently of this land is that there is a water line that runs approximately here under the fence, and that will be encapsulated in an easement with this process. So generally I agree, if there is right-of-way that's of a public need, we have to look very long and hard at whether that land adds value to the city. And I think we take each one on a case-by-case basis. I would recommend going forward that this one currently does not provide a service other than the utility line, which we can put in an easement, is currently serving the two properties.
Thank you. Commissioner Hardy?
Yeah. Don't we have something in the comprehensive plan about being very, very careful about how we dispose of right of way and things of that nature? That basically we'll need a really good reason not to abandon right of way. It's in the comprehensive plan we just approved last year.
We do, and I think the intent of that section really is dealing with right of way that's being utilized for the public purpose.
Sure.
Such as an alley. If a project comes in and we have to look at, do we want to abandon or vacate the alley? We look at, is that alley going to provide a public service? Is there a connection to it? Or is it a random piece? So that's what I'm saying. We evaluate each one on a case-by-case basis. This one currently, I don't see in the future serving a public purpose. So at that point, I would say if we don't need it for this and we can encapsulate what we do need in an easement, let's get it back to the public. In all honesty, get it back on the tax rolls. This puts it back upon the tax rolls, and it makes it viable land for those adjacent property owners.
And my next question would be when it goes back on the tax rolls. Now, my understanding is when you make an improvement to a homesteaded property that's not a part of the original structure, that is assessed in the next assessable year. Will this be assessed at market value today, or will it go underneath the homestead cap that does not allow us to tax it at current market rates?
I don't want to speak to how the policies of the tax assessors. I'm not an expert on that. I will tell you that we are required to have this recorded and sent in, and the tax assessor made aware of these changes. How they process it, we'd have to get the tax assessor in here to answer that directly.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Robinson?
Those were my questions, and you answered them.
Okay, thank you. We've got a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item D, ordinance number 2019-8, first reading. City Attorney, would you read the ordinance, please?
Yes, ma'am. Mayor, ordinance number 2019-08 of the City of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, amending Chapter 19 Streets and Sidewalks, Article 1 in general, by deleting Section 19-13 shopping carts on public ways and replacing it with a new Section 19-13 shopping cart requirements for public right-of-ways and for shopping cart owners, providing for severability, the repeal of those in conflict, codification, and providing an effective date.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Glory be.
Glory be. Here's the ordinance.
6 years later.
Okay, hold on one second. We've got a public comment card from Peggy
Who
Fisher.
made the second? I'm so sorry.
Vice Mayor.
Okay, good, thank you.
Peggy Fisher.
Peggy Fisher, 508 North A Street. With adopting this resolution, you've now put another item on code enforcement to do in this city. I live in a neighborhood where there are code enforcement issues, one right after another, that aren't addressed. And so now instead of the code enforcement officers dealing with our single-family neighborhoods, we're going to send them out on Dixie Highway and Lake Worth Road and 10th Avenue to worry about shopping carts. Now, I understand shopping carts are proliferating amongst this city. I mean, they're like rabbits. They're everywhere. But I think code enforcement, especially with the freeze that was mentioned earlier tonight on code enforcement officers, I think there needs to be some prioritization of where their effort should be spent. And I, as a property owner here in the city, feel that it is best served in single-family and multifamily neighborhoods where we have cars on jacks, cars on lawns, tractor trailers parked on the roadways, all sorts of things that are much more detrimental than a shopping cart on a sidewalk. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Robinson?
Are we going to require phone numbers on the shopping cart owners attached to the cart?
If you'd like, I'll walk through the ordinance briefly.
Please
and we
do.
can go
Please
down
do.
through
Well,
it, and then we can get.
Can we, if it isn't, can we make an amendment to that it requires a phone number on all the shopping carts in the city?
So the ordinance currently, and again, if I can get through the presentation, we'll get there. But to answer your question directly, yes, the ordinance would require that the store owner have a plaque on his cart with the identification of the store and a phone number to call.
And then citizens can make that call as well as code enforcement.
Correct. So to bring some clarity to the issue,
Hold on, the vice mayor's got a question before you start.
apologies.
You might answer it now. Can you briefly, if not in the presentation, talk about how your staff met with the different store owners who showed up, who didn't, and that it's already being moved into process? That some of them stepped up to the plate?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I will confess, when Commissioner Maxwell first brought this up, it's one of those issues of shopping carts. You see them occasionally, but I relate this to when when you go out and you buy a car and you buy the coolest car on the lot and you drive down the street and you see 6 of them and you're like, really? Everyone has one of these. As he mentioned it, I'm driving around the city like, there's no shop. Oh, there's one. He's got. Oh, hey, there's one over there. Oh, now I see one, and then I go to work, and there's by the El Bodegon. They're right there in the thing. I'm like, all right, you know what? Son of a gun, he's right. So, a couple points. One, we sat down with the shop owners, and we met with them on March 4th to say, hey, listen, we see that's an issue. We have problems here in the city of the carts running amok, and we want to work with you, but come up with a way that we can deal with this issue. The shop owners were not at all opposed to it. As a matter of fact, they realized that at between $300 and $500 a piece, they can't afford to keep losing carts and losing the revenue of replacing those carts on a regular basis. So we had the meeting. We invited all the ones that we knew. We went around and personally handed them an invitation to this meeting. A few of them did show up. Others then asked for comments and afterwards. So I think we did a good job reaching out to the stores in the area and the shops that utilize carts to say, hey, let's work together to come up with a solution to this. So the key elements of this new ordinance, and let me just back up by saying, is that we currently have a shopping cart code, but it wasn't fully compliant with the state law. So we wanted to make sure that what we were doing was in line with the state statute on shopping carts. So the new ordinance says, one, that all carts, Commissioner Robinson, have a sign that identifies name, address, and phone number. That's part of it. We're required to do that. Two, notice of penalties for removal of shopping carts. So there's a notice on the store in the parking lot saying it is a penalty to remove a cart from this process without the permission of the shop owner. Doesn't say you can't take it with you, but you have to have the permission of the owner to take it, otherwise it's stealing a cart. Three is we require the business to have an on-site shopping cart retention system of some sort. And I'll go into that briefly again. And four, require the business to establish a containment plan, which must be submitted to the city. Now, we went around and we looked at what other cities do, and in all honesty, a lot of what we pulled off was plagiarism from other cities. A lot of cities have already addressed this issue. We go out and look what they do. We find out what the best practices are, and we implemented it the best we could within this ordinance. So here's our existing ordinance. Basically, it says that if you have a cart, try to keep it on there, and if the city must notify by certified mail return receipt of the adoption of this section, and after that, we don't have to tell the store owners that we have their carts. If they come get them, fine. If not, we trash them. Well, that's the key part that wasn't in line with the state law. So that's one of the things that we had to fix. The state law says if a city takes a cart off the public right-of-way, we have to notify the store as soon as possible to let them know that we have their cart and they have time to get it back, okay?
Can they pay a fee?
No. On-shop retention systems, just real quick, the ones we looked at and the ones that we think that will be effective for the stores are the locking mechanism. And anyone who's gone to Publix or anything, you cross over the line, the wheel lock, you're like, ugh. Happened to my wife and I the other day. We went left or right instead of straight, and we crossed over the line, and the cart locks, and I'm like, really? I'm the one who just wrote the ordinance. I don't even know this. It catches you, and you know what? You can decide I'm just going to pop a wheelie and just ride the thing out there. I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm really not 12 anymore, and I can't do that. So that is an effective way. You can have some of the stores will have a tall bar that doesn't let you get out of the door. No, I didn't try it yet. I thought about it, trying to run as fast as I could, but it didn't work. And there's a monetary deposit. If you go to Aldi's and other stores like that, you have to put a quarter in, take it back. It's an effective way of retaining them. So any of those would be an allowed way for, an approved way for a shop to retain their cards. In the ordinance, if a cart is found in the public right-of-way, the staff will remove the cart, put it into a storage area, and then we'll have to notify the owner, and we'll post a notice in City Hall. We don't have to do it by certified mail, so that saves us some cost. The owner of the cart has 20 days to come claim said cart. After 20 days, the cart now belongs to the city for us to keep, use, give to leisure services, or destroy or through recycling. If carts are found on private property, we already have the codes in place. We need to do that, and we go under trash and debris on the property, and we can have the cart removed and the property cited. So this ordinance doesn't directly affect that. We already have the tools we need to do to get them off of private property. And then in the violations and penalties section, if any establishment does not put together these requirements, having a containment system, having a way of retaining the carts on site, meet those 4 criteria after 180 days of adoption, then we can go after the shop owner as a violation of this thing. We'll use their code enforcement policies to do that, and we'll cite them for that. Now here's the tricky part. If you look at, this is a state statute that enables us to do this. If you look at 5131 subpart 2, the state said, yeah, you can go after stores, but you can't fine them if it's not one of them that took it off the site. You can cite the person who took it, and that becomes a crime, and I don't want to quote what level of crime it is, but that becomes a crime that the police can go after because it's theft of property. But we can't cite a store owner if we find his carts around the city. Okay? So that's the gist of the ordinance, and if you have any detailed questions, we can go through it, but that's what we're bringing forward.
Mr. Robinson?
After the period of time has expired, we pick it up. We can't require a deposit to get it back.
No. So what the state law says is no fees, fines, or costs may be assessed against the owner of the shopping cart unless the shopping cart was found on a public property and was removed from the premise by the owner or one of their employees. Which is not going to happen. It's the people who shop there that are taking them. So we can't go after the store owners and fine them for these carts being around the city. We just go, we collect them up, and we give them back to them.
It's a deposit.
Vice Mayor?
2 questions. If we collect them, they're not picked up, can we scrap them and make money that way?
Scrap. That's what I'm saying. We can dispose of them. They become our property. We can recycle them.
Physically recycle them, make money.
Absolutely.
That comes back for the time spent chasing it. And then how many stores now have locking mechanisms? I know
All the
Publix.
Publix does.
Because I saw a guy on its side going down by Compass the other day trying to, and I'm like, why is it on its side? I'm like, oh, that's why it's on its side.
It wasn't me.
So,
I think about a third of the shops here have some sort of mechanism on them currently. Bodegón has it. I know theirs got cut when they had some work done in the parking lot, and that's another part of this is the system doesn't have to be installed, it has to be maintained, and that's something that we can, in your containment plan, we can go out and inspect and make sure and validate that it is still working.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. You mentioned that you don't have to serve by certified mail notice. Have you thought about implementing some sort of a designated agent or registered agent component in this to where every grocery store would have to designate, somebody that we can contact directly that's responsible for that.
And yes, and that's part of the containment plan process is we need to know who to contact, who your person is. It doesn't have to be the store manager. It can be an employee who's responsible. And then we make sure that's updated every year.
So as a matter of practice, as I'm wheeling my public shopping cart down Dixie Highway illegally, what happens to me potentially if I'm wheeling my shopping cart? Well, it's not my shopping cart, but somebody else's shopping cart.
PPSO can approach you and ask you if you have the permission of the shop owner to take that cart. And they can take you back to the store and verify that you have permission to have it. If a store owner wants to do that, I know that the stores do, you can go in and say, hey, listen, I need to get my groceries home. Can I leave a security or some sort of deposit there? The store can say yes, and if stores want to, as part of their plan, they can give you, I always think of it like a 2x4 on a key that used to have to get in the gas station to go to the bathroom. They can give you something you had to take back to the store, and if you get stopped, you say, hey, I had this legally, and then you have to walk it back to the store.
You know, I certainly understand that there are folks out there that have a legitimate reason for needing the shopping cart to get the
Correct.
groceries home.
And that
I get that. The issue is they're not returning them.
Correct. This doesn't stop
Okay.
them from doing that. It just means you have to return it or. And currently, our public services department does on occasionally go out there, and when code enforcement is out in the city and we do see them, we simply call them, and they've been very quick to respond. They'll send somebody out and they get them, they store them, and then we let the shops know. A lot of times, to be honest with you, the public service guys, they throw a bunch in the store and they go back to the store and say, here's your carts back.
Okay. Let's see how it works.
It doesn't hurt us at all to be kind and give them back to the stores.
I just want them off. I think we all agree. We just want them off. The unsightliness addressed. So
Well, we have a raft race in the summer when we have.
You can put flotation devices on them.
Shopping
and make them
cart
into rafts.
race in the
We could have a shopping cart race.
Everyone decorates one, and we go down Lake Avenue or something like that.
Thank you.
Give us a card.
Yep. And I want to thank Commissioner Maxwell for addressing this issue, and I want to thank Commissioner Maxwell for addressing the issue behind the issue. The actual issue is that there are people who obviously need to go grocery shopping, but who don't have access to a vehicle and who need to take their groceries home. And what they use is a shopping cart, and by the time they're done with that, they can't go back and take the shopping cart there. And so I appreciate Commissioner Maxwell for, again, touching not only the issue, but the issue behind the issue. And what I hope is that we would encourage the stores to develop some sort of system where they can do this. I know it seems very old, maybe this is something that might have existed in small towns in the 50s, right? When people had trust in one another and all the world was great. For some people, the world was a great place to be in the 1950s. But, I want to see us try to encourage the store owners to address the issue behind the issue. And maybe one day when we have enough money in the general fund, we can discuss ways to get people where they need to go here in the city. I understand Palm Train operates a bus system, and the bus system hits the nodes in the city. But there are other cities that have trolley systems. I understand that we don't have the money to operate such a trolley system, but that's what other cities do to make sure that their people can get to and from within the city. So I appreciate everyone involved for addressing this issue.
one more time.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem?
And I recognize that, we have our challenges at the staff level to do and provide services that we'd like to provide to the community. I know that one of the cool things I thought about the ordinance that I provided some 5 or 6 years ago to look at, I think was out of South Carolina. And I think what they had done in that community was they actually had a program where folks could buy the little two-wheel metal pull-behind carts, you know what I'm talking about? But they bought them, the city bought them at like a really deep discount and was able to provide those and make them available to the public really, really inexpensively. Maybe this is something we can aspire to look into in the future and partner with the grocery stores. Maybe that would be an option for them to sell these things for, I don't know what they'd go for, $10 or $20 or whatever, that folks could use those in lieu of, taking the shopping cart. Again, I understand how difficult it would be to carry a bunch of groceries a block in this heat, let alone, a quarter mile and some of the distances that some people have to walk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Also, I just want to just add something that Commissioner Hardy reminded me of. Through my organization, my working with the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is now called the TPA, I had in the past gotten the funding for 2 trolleys to return back to Lake Worth. And the problem is that we could get the funding to do it, but they wouldn't give us the trolleys unless we had the funds to operate them. And that's where, when he mentioned, I just want to reiterate because it's some new people here tonight. So we actually could get funding for the trolley system. The argument has always been, who's going to use it? Will people use it? I know, back then it wasn't used and whatever, so I'd like to encourage my fellow commissioners to, just to, I won't stay on this motion, but to let's talk about this in the near future again, because I think we have a whole new audience of people who would actually utilize a trolley system again, and maybe we could start making that a priority for our seniors in this community, from access to supermarkets and stores and shops, and people going to work. If we're talking about walkable, livable, whatever, at least some public transportation that works immediately in our area, I think is a smart conversation to have, so I would encourage that. Thank you all. We've got a motion on the floor in a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I'll gladly go back and lobby for those trolleys again.
How many?
Here we go.
How many?
Moving on to unfinished business, continuation of discussion about accessory dwelling units in the city.
31.
Oh, my goodness. 31. I think that's a record. All right. I just want to mention for a second, went to the U.S. Conference of Mayors, was not here. I saw and watched under the directions from my email when I got back, to watch the meeting in its entirety. So I did. It was also requested in that meeting that the vice mayor, did you?
I did.
And he did as well. So we've seen the entire, including all the testimonies that were given at that meeting. So if you've already spoken at the previous meeting and you want to speak again, you can. But if you won't, we've seen everybody's testimony at that meeting. So if there's anybody else that wants to put a card into, you can do that. And I don't know, city attorney, you tell me, I wasn't quite sure by watching the discourse back and forth, how it ended with the way the vice mayor pro tem left it. I wasn't sure how the structure of this item would be.
Well, the way I understood it was, since it was already discussed extensively, that it would be limited to 30 minutes. Now, obviously, you have 31 comment cards, so that in and of itself is going to probably exceed the 30 minutes, but I at least thought the intent was among the commissioners wouldn't engage in a long conversation after the public commented. I'd suggest you may want to kind of self-police yourselves and put a minute of 3, 4, 5 minutes on each commissioner to speak, period, end of story. That way you stay at least on the commission part of it, maybe to within a 15 or 20 minute time frame, because clearly you're going to be over 30 minutes just on public comment alone. So I don't know if Mayor, you like that concept, and the rest of the commissioners, but some kind of 3, 4, 5 minute limit per commissioner, speak one time, twice if you want, but some way to keep at least that portion of the meeting tighter.
We've heard all the arguments the last time around. If there are any more arguments that would be brought to light, or any other, I shouldn't say arguments, but any other factoids that come out of the last meeting, I'm more than happy to discuss, but I did watch a lot. Also, if you want to come up too, when you spoke the last time and you just want to say, I'm for it, I'm against it, I'm for it, I'm against it, you can do that as well. You don't have to take up 2 minutes of time. These are 2 minutes of time. Just so you know, 3 minutes is for public participation of non-agenda items, and these ones are 2 minutes. All right? So we're going to start. Just remember, everyone, for the record, we're going to, I guess do we have to take a motion before we go to public comment? It's a discussion. Okay.
It's a discussion.
I'm going to call everyone. I'm going to put up who's on deck after that, so you all know, and you can be aware of when you come next. Again, be courteous to one another, please. And be respectful. We're here to try to help work together to make solutions. And talking over, yelling over, whatever will not be acceptable. Okay? We want to show some respect for everybody and get your opinions. Your opinions are important. And I want everyone to feel that they can say and share exactly how they feel about it. But let's just, again, be respectful and not turn your phones off and all that. And also state your address for the record. First up, Priscilla Hallowell, followed by Mary Watson. You want to see your card? Sure. Just bring it back.
My name is Priscilla Hallowell. I live at 1512 North Lakeside Drive, and I also own another house at 1508 North Lakeside Drive. So I have 2 pieces. Oh, sorry. My concerns basically are the environment, which I think I'm against this, and I think because of the environment, more Airbnbs on our road. I'm worried about the storm damage, more concrete, and not forcing the problems that we already have in our town.
Thank you very much. Mary Watson, followed by William Feldkamp. Again, state your addresses too after your name. Thanks.
Mary Watson, 1817 Montague Street.
I am so against this, and I really feel kind of double-crossed. We have a plan and zoning commission, and this comes out of nowhere and has slipped under the rug. And it was kind of brought up that you two were missing, absent somewhere off, you know, just not taking your duties seriously. Yeah, that's what it's kind of seemed to me. Anyhow, I bought a single-family home to live in a single-family neighborhood. We have a very strong neighborhood. We help each other. We are pretty much very low crime unless it comes in from the outside. We take care of each other. This makes the cost for the city go way down. If this goes through, potentially there will be 2 times as many renters in our neighborhood as people who originally lived there. This is just simply not right. Also, this triples the impervious surface in our neighborhoods in our entire city. Look at Miami. Is that what we want in 10 years? This is all concrete. That water's got to go somewhere. It's going to come in with the storms. This is a huge gift to sober homes and the drug dealers. They absolutely love this. They can move all around the neighborhood. They are not controlled now. Also, parking. We have swales that are full of cars right now. Where is that going to go? Safety. How are you going to get an ambulance into these places? And don't tell me you're not going to have a lot of overdoses in those little homes hiding in the alleys. There's so much wrong with this. It's not thought through. Why do we have a plan and zoning commission and this comes out like out of nowhere? This is terrible. I'm so against this.
Thank you. William Feldkamp, followed by Kim Lingle.
William Feldkamp, 205, apartment 205, 108 Lake Avenue. You will hear a lot of concern from local residents about this, and there are reasons to be concerned. Certainly the last speaker had that. We are not asking for you to say yes or no tonight. This is a matter of, if I'm not mistaken, asking city employees, city staff to follow up and address these concerns. And I think we owe it to ourselves as a city to address those concerns, have staff look at the issues. Certainly there are other cities around Minneapolis has adopted this for the entire city. Portland and a lot of smaller cities as well. It is an idea that is becoming more and more spoken about. You've heard and seen articles in the New York Times about it, in the Palm Beach Post. So yes, there are concerns. Please listen to the concerns and ask staff to follow up on those concerns and see whether it works or whether it doesn't. Just follow up, do your homework. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Rule 6, Section 3.
No, we've got a lot of things to go through, and we'll discuss right after. Kim Lingle, followed by Jeannie Hoban.
Hi, my name is Kim Lingle. I live in Eden Place neighborhood. I'm very much in support of the ADUs, but I'm also equally as supportive that we address all of the concerns. I share the environmental concerns. I share the concerns about parking. I share the concerns about architectural cohesiveness in our neighborhoods. I'm for population density. I am concerned about our downtown. I'm concerned about aging parents who are coming back. I'm concerned about kids who are coming back to live at home. God forbid, I'm hoping it's not mine. But I think it's important. We had a lot of people in the room the last time we had a meeting who were very much in support of it, and their voices would love to be heard. I just feel like this is worth more of a discussion. I don't feel like we're at the point because there's so much division. And when mayor, you have to tell people, look, we have to be respectful in our conversations. It shows that there's a lot of passion around this issue, and there is a lot of division about it. I think it's time that we say practically, okay, what are the real issues? How are we going to be addressed? And then base our decision based on the facts and the science of what we find out throughout the study. Sorry.
Jeannie, followed by Ruth Babbitt.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I agree with my neighbor, Kim Lingle. Many of my friends and neighbors are wearing very fancy red shirts this evening, but I am in support of ADUs. There's been a lot of misinformation spread on the issue. There is a lot of questions and issues to be answered. A day doesn't pass that there isn't a new article coming out from those that have been mentioned. I just read one about Broward County addressing the very issues that we are all concerned about, and that includes parking and owner occupancy. And so I urge also for you to just slow down and give the time to consider these issues by allowing staff to research it and find the answers to the questions we have before shutting it down. I live in a single-family neighborhood, and I do support ADUs. Thank you.
Ruth Babbitt, followed by Marty Wellfeld.
Jeannie Babbitt. Oh, I don't know if that's right.
Hi, Ruth Babbitt, 1880 North End. I have a detached garage, and when I read about this in the paper, this is why I came to this meeting, because I think this is the best idea I've heard in a long time. I would love to turn my garage into a little apartment. In the meantime, I could rent it out, and with that income, I could improve my house. And then when my sister gets old, she can live in there. Okay? So I see nothing wrong with this. I mean, whatever helps you work it out, that's not my concern. I'm focused on my little piece of the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Marty Wellfeld, followed by Teresa Miller.
Marty Wellfeld, 829 North Lakeside, also speaking for my fellow left-wing liberal Teresa Miller. ADUs are an ill-conceived social engineering solution in search of a problem that does not exist in Lake Worth Beach: insufficient lower-cost housing. Lake Worth Beach is the second poorest city in Palm Beach County. We have serious unemployment and underemployment. We have a large immigrant community that struggles with various financial and legal issues. We have problems with slumlords exploiting renters. We have problems with drugs, prostitution, burglary, and street crime. The city itself is struggling financially. Our downtown is in need of more people with disposable income that will visit and live here. The ADU issue has seen sponsors post links to articles decrying the choice to live in a single-family home as perpetuating a racist scheme. Sponsors have cried out when others rejected rezoning single-family residence neighborhoods to multifamily, loudly protesting that that is not what would be happening, when in fact, clearly that is exactly what would be happening. Speech against ADUs has been labeled as fear-mongering. How dare anyone disagree with the sponsors? What do they think, they have rights of their own? We have heard about ADUs in other cities whose population size and other important differences from Lake Worth Beach must be ignored. What I think should be ignored is an undesirable plan that will absolutely change the core nature of neighborhoods that brought people to Lake Worth Beach to begin with. What I think should be done with the time, energy, and funding available to Lake Worth Beach is to continue to address the list of problems that I cited previously. Let's kill this false hope tonight. No charrettes, no workshops, no more municipal focus on this boondoggle. Thank you.
Teresa Miller, followed by Sammy Alzafan.
Teresa Miller, 829 North Lakeside. First of all, I want you to know I'm speaking for Ellen and Paul Dahlberger, who are my neighbors and couldn't be here tonight. So bear with me, I do have to read this. Dear Mayor Triello and gentlemen, I want to add my voice of opposition to the proposal to allow ADUs in my Lake Worth Beach neighborhood, Parrot Cove. Many thanks to Commissioner Hardy for providing background and source documents. It seems that some among us have reached the conclusion that ADUs will solve some important Lake Worth Beach problems. The key ideas include 6,000 additional residents that are forecast to be moving here, an assumption that they will need affordable housing, and further that if they live within walking distance to downtown, they will increase foot traffic and spending in our businesses downtown. Excuse me, not so fast. If any analysis of the characteristics of people likely to walk downtown and spend the most were performed, I believe it is more likely identifying families with young children, and we should be asking to attract them. Further, I believe that the character of my Parrot Cove neighborhood will be adversely affected as investors replace homeowners who occupy the houses. If there is a problem that Lake Worth Beach needs to solve, let's identify the problem, gain agreement that the problem needs a solution, and then commission unbiased analysis that is evidence-based, that shows the conditions under which alternative solutions are likely to succeed or fail. Only then can we have an informed debate and make sound decision that is likely to benefit Lake Worth Beach. At this time, the only sensible course of action is to reject the proposal to change the zoning laws to allow ADUs. Please do so. Thank you. Ellen Dahlberger, and she's a PhD in economics, so she knows from whence she
Thank you.
speaks.
Sammy Alzofan? Sammy Alzofan, followed by Todd Townsend.
Good evening. I want to first thank you all for carrying this discussion forward. I missed the workshop. I watched it this afternoon, and I appreciate having this opportunity. My name's Sammy Alzafan. I live at 511 Lucerne Avenue. I've been a Lake Worth resident for 5 years, lived in West Palm for 20 plus years before that. However, I'm here as chair of the affordable housing group that is part of the League of Women Voters of Palm Beach County. We formed our housing group after the May 2017 countywide housing summit, which declared a housing crisis in the county. The League is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. We fully support the use of accessory dwelling units in planning and zoning. Accessory dwelling units provide a source of affordable housing where we're finding limited land to create new housing, limited possibilities for increasing the real estate tax base, aging single-family dwellings, and municipal infrastructures in need of repairs and upgrades. Lake Worth Beach is unique. It's diverse, it's creative, with beautiful neighborhoods and great housing. The addition of affordable ADUs will create an even more vibrant city for both young and old. The young need a home also. Our young leaguers tell us so. ADUs are an inviting option. Older residents whose incomes may be reduced to a point where they find it difficult to maintain their homes will benefit from the legal ability to create an ADU, which could provide additional income. Single seniors like me will have access to affordable housing. Personally, I chose my Lake Worth Beach residence because it's walkable and affordable. I live in a very small, easily maintainable space. I'm close to bus transportation, train transportation.
Thank you.
I'll skip. Thank you. The League believes zoning for ADUs will help resolve affordable housing issues and renew and stabilize neighborhoods and commercial areas. And we ask that you consider moving ahead with study, education, and advocacy.
Thank you
for
very
ADUs.
much. Todd Townsend, followed by Patricia Schultz. Todd, I wrote something, so I will read it. I am for this project, however, with such a bright future in the beach project and ADU and new hotel, we should stop the sale of property at 10th and A Street. Our road space should be utmost consideration. Ms. Schultz?
Oh, hello. I'm Patty Schultz, and I live at 25 Harvard Drive in College Park. And good evening, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. I'm opposed to ADUs. I heard about this ADU proposal the night before the public workshop on the news at 11 o'clock. And I have to say this. When I arrived, I sat down next to a woman who later spoke to the commission. And she was a school teacher. And she told me that Omari Hardy had called her and asked her to come and speak on behalf of ADUs. And that really was not a real public workshop. Okay. Right after that, I was very surprised to see that Commissioner Hardy had started a petition on change.org. And I thought that very strange for a commissioner to do that. And we didn't know what to do because we were so far behind. So we decided that the only thing that we could do was to also start a petition on change.org. We started on July 2nd, and as of this afternoon, we have 576 signatures opposing ADUs in Lake Worth Beach. And As of this afternoon, I see that Commissioner Hardy's petition for ADUs has a total of 149 signatures. So I think the response to each petition says it all. I have, for each of you, I have all the signatures and the comments of the people that, I'm proud of this community for doing this, for putting their signature on this, so I want you all to have this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll be fast. Okay.
I'm sorry, the bells are.
I believe that this is a multifamily zoning change that.
Thank you. I'm
disguised-
sorry, it's past the buzzer ring.
It did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. I know when you're up there, you don't hear it a lot of times. Joe Schultz? Sorry about that.
Joe Schultz, 25 Harvard Drive. I just want to stand up against these ADUs, and I want you to vote no to the ADUs.
Thank you. Up next, Olo and Josephine Heimerl, followed by Gail Silverblatt. I'm sorry, some of the names are hard to pronounce, and some of them I can't read them.
My name is Otto Heimerl. I live at 1310 North Lakeside Drive, and we moved here 20 years ago, and it was not the greatest town, Lakewood. There was friends of ours to say, why do you move to Lakewood? There are nicer towns than that. But I think Lakewood has improved, and especially now we're doing nice roads and the water lines, but by changing the ordinance, the road's going to be used as parking lots, and I'm absolutely against it. Thank you.
Gail Silverblatt, followed by Katie McGivern.
Gail Silverblatt, 414 North Ocean Breeze. I think this is a really bad idea, and I have 7 reasons why. Number 1, there's an expectation from homeowners who buy a home in a single-family neighborhood that it should remain single-family zoning. The homeowner shouldn't have to worry that it will be changed or that the density will be increased. Number 2, it was stated by a supporter of ADUs that adding an ADU or rental house in the backyard of an existing house was not changing the zoning, but it is increasing the density and intensity so that it's equivalent to changing the zoning. The land use has changed. Number 3, it's a misconception to call them granny flats, unless only grannies can live there rent-free. They're detached, rentable houses. Number 4, it would decrease privacy in our backyards. Right now, ADUs are allowed in multifamily zoning districts with 3-foot side setbacks and a 24-foot height, which is measured halfway up a pitched roof plus an 18-inch floor height. This would be almost 30 feet tall. Adding an ADU in a backyard would affect the quality of life for the neighbor next door by adding noise and light intrusions. Number 5, West Palm Beach's Grand View Heights is being used as an example of allowing ADUs in a single-family neighborhood. But the city of West Palm Beach only allows ADUs behind single-family homes if the lot is 60 feet or wider. Lake Worth Beach lots are mostly 50 feet wide. Also, Grandview Heights is zoned SF14 for high-density single-family, not SF7, which is my neighborhood, and defined as low-density single-family. Number 6, single-family residential is only 38% of Lake Worth Beach's land acreage and should be protected to allow for increased property values. And number 7, under past zoning considerations, the idea was to build more housing, condos, apartments, and mixed-use residential units on the main roadways such as 6th Avenue South, 10th Avenue North, Dixie Highway, in order to protect the neighborhoods from the density and intensity of the traffic. But now with ADUs, the increased density is being encouraged to be placed inside our single-family neighborhoods.
Hi, Katie
Anderson, you're on
McGivern.
deck.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Katie McGivern, 2121 Collier Avenue. I am opposed to the ADUs. In 2005, the Political Action Committee Save Our Neighborhood was formed in response to the threat to one single-family neighborhood. One. Save Our Neighborhood had to bring about the election of a whole new dais of elected officials. Now 2 commissioners have taken upon themselves to threaten every single-family neighborhood in the city. If these 2 commissioners persist in pushing for ADUs, Save Our Neighborhood will do our best to make sure that they are not reelected. For over 15 years, commissioners have been promising to clean up our neighborhoods and the slumlords that have destroyed them. Now we have those on the dais who want to turn every property owner in every single-family neighborhood into a potential slumlord. We chose to live in single-family zoned neighborhoods because we did not want to live next to a hotel. What recourse will any of us have if instead of sweet little Granny or the Fonz living above the garage next door to us, we get a brothel, overcrowded rental slum, or a drug-dealing party house? Let's face it, the powers that be in this town can't even keep a swimming pool filled up. Do you really think that they will be able to do anything to help you or your neighbors? More than enough properties in this town are already zoned for sweet little Granny to move into. We don't need this potential nightmare. Thank you.
Lynn Anderson. Lynn Anderson, followed by Scott Sheridan. You want me to read it? Okay. 100% against ADUs. I don't want our single-family residential neighborhoods destabilized. Scott Sheridan, like me to read it? City already overcrowded, no off-street parking, poorly planned, expensive restaurants unaffordable by grannies. Jack Potenza, followed by Anthony Murata. Jack Potenza.
Jack Potenza, 2607 Holy Cross Lane. First of all, I want to say I think it's great that so many residents have come to this meeting. It's wonderful. I hope that a lot of people will be at other meetings. Secondly, I want to say very clearly, I am against ADUs as rental units. I think it's wrong. I think it is possibly can be used for abuse and not good for the neighbors. However, many city properties have existing small cottages, cabanas, and granny quarters that have been there for many, many years. I am for their use for members of their family, their guests, and of course for grandma and grandpa. And these should never be rented. The next thing I want to say is what really makes me see red, though, is that comments made by a few individuals to demonize people that don't agree with them, to demonize commissioners that are always looking for new ways to try to help Lake Worth. They may not be on target, but they have meetings to say, hey, what's your input? Come to this meeting. Tell us what you think. And then if you agree with them, you demonize them. This is wrong. We should congratulate people for exploring things, but they may not be the best. And that's why you are here. And we appreciate all you coming together. Statements that sensationalize sober houses will proliferate the area. Sex traffickers' dream. That's not helpful. It really isn't. In summary, I want to say we got 4 great commissioners. We got a great mayor, a great city manager, and they want your input. You've given them your input. Continue to do it. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Anthony Murata, followed by Susan Ona.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Anthony Murata, 327 North Lakeside Drive. I'm in opposition of how this was spearheaded with an all-in, citywide, fully legal, reduced setback requirements, lower habitable space requirement, and remove or lower permit fees and connection charges, move to use CRA tax money and other housing funds to promote their proliferation as was suggested. ADUs are currently permitted to be built in all areas of the city. Anyone who wants one for extra living space, storage, put family members they don't like very much when they come to town, can absolutely build them right now in single family, and they can be rented in multifamily. Undertaking the very costly process of sending city staff on an 8 to 12 month mission, which is what it was stated at the workshop it would be, to rewrite our LDRs and write new sections of this is not an efficient and effective use of our tax dollars and delays other important projects that can be much more impactful. The benefit of aging in place or caring for elderly relatives has been brought up with a few tweaks to the current LDRs. The same units that are permitted now can have a stove under those circumstances. Let's retain the neighborhood character that attracted us all to move here in the first place and concentrate on our corridors that can handle the density. This is not a no to density. This is a yes to the right density. More projects like the mid for Dixie Highway will totally change the landscape of that area and allow a true transformation for opportunities to create a corridor with housing and retail clustered to create a walkable and desirable area. We only have to look a bit north to see West Palm's redevelopment of Dixie. Let's maintain the character of what we all are here for and be wise about our density placement. Thank you.
Susan Ona, followed by Yolanda Vasquez.
Good evening, Susan Ona, 826 North Palmway. Hello, and commissioners and Madam Mayor. If I wanted to speak on the ADU, I'm against it. I'm against the idea of passing something tonight, for example. If the concern is to provide for additional and more affordable housing in Lake Worth Beach and the ability of residents to receive income and meeting those needs, we should first have a good count, is my concern, of how many ADUs currently exist in this city and where they are and how many have permits and have passed inspection. We all know that there are many unpermitted ADUs in the city, in areas of the city, in all areas of the city. How can we have a clear picture of the status of the housing shortage or lack thereof if we don't have a handle on the real number of units or potential living units that we have in the city? We might make an incentive for the owners of existing ADUs to self-report and avoid past charges if they register and allow inspection by the city, making any proper improvements and perhaps be waived the fines that might occur. Before we go ahead and make a blanket decision on an issue that we really don't understand, I recommend that the ADU issue be more clearly studied and defined by the Planning and Zoning Department. And looking at the zoning map today, I noticed that there are quite a number of existing, like Anthony says, areas of the city which are zoned for ADUs, and they're not being fully utilized, and we certainly don't have to change the plan. The plan looks good. Once that is done, and we have a carefully thought about increased parking, garbage, and sewage needs, we can then think about expanding the ADU units to more parts of the city on a case-by-case basis, which would best benefit each neighborhood and the future growth of Lake Worth Beach. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yolanda Vasquez, followed by Padma Hendricks and Chad Hendricks.
All right. Yolanda Vasquez, 511 South D Street. Now, I lived in Lake Worth since 2004. I don't have a PhD yet, but I'm working on it. I'm going to graduate the Master's in Public Health next year. The reason I'm mentioning that is because I've lived in an ADU, first one on 801 South Federal Highway. That was my first apartment. And I've lived there for many years while we had Lake Worth Police here. And then I was able to get a home in 2012, which Commissioner Maxwell was at my home dedication. I am for ADU. Why? Why everyone is obviously separated on the issue. And I live in a section of town where it is allowed. Sorry. I live in a section of town where it's allowed. And the reason I'm fighting for everyone's ability to build is because life changes. I have a very close family member with a mental disability, and she's going to need somewhere to stay. She's not going to be able to be institutionalized, so she's going to need to be close enough. Now, they're called granny flats, laneway houses, coach houses. I think it's extremely hypocritical, and I'm sorry, that the majority of the people that are against it, most of them, purchase their property with an ADU with the intention to rent it out for investment, and then only a certain part of the city can do that. So not everyone is going to have the ability to build an ADU because they're not going to have the ability or have the space, the FAR space. People telling me that they're going to be hovels and drug addicts are going to be there. A drug addict is not going to be renting out an ADU in your backyard. And a drug addict is going to have the same possibility of ODing in a single family neighborhood than an ADU.
Thank you very much.
So, thank you.
Padma Hendricks and Chad Hendricks, followed by Christine Olson and Kim McKeever.
I'm Patty Heiner, and I'm a 16-year resident of 170 Auburn Drive, and I moved into the single-family neighborhood. I wanted to stay a single-family neighborhood, and I understand Ms. Vasquez's concerns, but we're not abolishing ADUs. You still can get an ADU. You just have to go through the process.
That's fine. That's not in my
Oh,
neighborhood.
so it's okay.
If you could address
But I'm just
You just addressed me. Yeah.
okay. I'm sorry,
That's
but I'm just. But the concern is that ADUs will be abolished and grannies will not have a place to stay. That's not the case. There's no reason to make this a default that they are permitted. There is a manner in which you can go about getting permission to do that. I'm wholly opposed to it.
Christine Olson.
Thank you. Christine Olson, 2614 Duquesne Lane. I'm speaking for myself and Kim McEvers. Sorry, better?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for having this discussion tonight. I know that the last meeting was a little bit, it wasn't as well thought through as I think that it could have been. I appreciate that we're spending the time to listen to people and address some of these issues. I think this is a very contentious issue. I am fully against it, as is Kim McEvers, because we bought into a single-family house. I guess we're fortunate enough to be able to do that, but there are places for ADUs, I guess, but not necessarily in every community. And I hope that if you move forward with this, that we look at that and maybe the neighborhoods can help decide whether or not they want them in there. Thank you.
Bob Newbarth, followed by Bev Newbarth.
I'm speaking for both.
Are you speaking for both?
Personally, I don't think I'm going to need this.
Oh, we actually do for the people at home that are listening.
I am definitely opposed to it. I ask you, please vote against it, and I have reason because of parking. I live.
Did you talk into? I'm sorry. The people at home can't hear you.
Use the microphone.
Do you use the no? Use the microphone,
Just
please.
use the microphone.
I'm sorry.
Anyway.
That's for public record. Thank you.
Is that taking off my time?
No, I'll give it back to you. I'll start saying thank you a lot later. Go ahead.
Okay. Anyway, my name's Bob Newbarth. I live in College Park at 315 and 319. I own two houses. One of them you almost say could be, what is that? ADU. And maybe then I wouldn't have to pay $5,400 property tax on it because I let my daughter and granddaughter live there. It's not a rental. It was a rental when I moved in. As soon as it became available, I bought it because I never liked anybody that lived there. Anyway, the problem is parking. In my block, you cannot, when you got both sides of the street parking, the streets are not wide enough for two cars to pass. Somebody has to stand at one end of the block, somebody at the other, and they try to agree who they're going to let go, and so the one will say, okay, come on, and then the other one will say, thank you. And plus, the ones of us that have sufficient parking like I do in my driveways, my daughters have trouble getting out of the driveway because people park these big vans. Anything, every ADU is going to produce at least one additional car that is not designed for parking on the property. So that's going to be parked in the street. If there's two people in it, they're going to have two cars. In College Park, everybody over 17 thinks they are entitled to have a car. So I have one neighbor that has 6 cars. The house across the street, which is one of an ADU, it has 3 units that are rental. They have 5
right, thank
people
you.
living there.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I gave you extra time because I know I. But
Anyway, they're putting 6 cars on the street.
Walter Krasinski, followed by Lori Whitkin.
That's okay. He's got a Seminole shirt on. I just want to note that.
How many?
Seminoles.
How many champions?
How many?
Less than 5.
Legitimate champions?
My name is Walter Krasinski. I live at 626 North Lakeside Drive. I have more issues just in terms of questions. My understanding was that, or is the ADU funded by federal funding? Because at the last meeting, a number of people said, well, I can't really pay for this. And what are you talking, 100,000, 50? What can you build? 50 to 100,000? And if you don't have funding, where's the money coming to support that? And then the other, how much did this study cost the city? Or was this a freebie?
We'll address it
Pardon?
after. We don't go back and forth with people.
Okay.
I'm making a mayor's exception, but we will answer questions at the end.
Well, and then my main concern, again, is the max amount of space of a new building to the property. I'm against it. I think I enjoy living in a neighborhood of single-family homes, and I think we should keep it that way.
Lori Whitkin, followed by Greg Rule.
Lori Whitkin, 1008 North Lakeside. We have some really nice, desirable single-family neighborhoods, and I don't understand why you guys want to mess with that. To me, the most important thing is the environment right now, and as far as that goes, this is a terrible idea. We need to be increasing our tree canopy and the amount of green space if we're going to be sustainable as the city long-term. And this is just putting up more cement, and I think we're going in the wrong direction there. I know that right now density in cities is a very trendy topic, but I don't think we have to hop on all the latest things in how cities should be run. Every few years somebody comes up with something else. I think we need to do what's right for Lake Worth. And I think, I mean, at least the reason I moved here, and I think a lot of people did, was because it didn't look like Boynton. It didn't look like West Palm Beach. It was nice, it was quiet, you had space around you, you could walk around. Adding density to the single-family neighborhoods is going to totally change the city in a way that won't be reversible. And we do have plenty of other dense areas. And one part of the problem with the city too is as far as neighborhoods, is you can have a single family in some way along the line, somebody put in some apartment building in there. And it sort of tears down the neighborhood. And I think this is going to do the same thing on a smaller scale. And I think there's a place for apartment buildings, Dixie, the corridors. And I think we also have plenty of affordable housing compared to other places. So I don't think we should be doing that. And I think economically, the people who are going to benefit are the investors and the people who are running Airbnbs. And they're going to say, okay, we can make money. I mean, maybe a few people might have an elderly relative, but when they leave, somebody else will buy it. And this just destabilizes neighborhoods. And I don't think that's a great idea. And anyway, so I'm definitely against this. Thank you.
Greg Roll, followed by Claire Miller.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Greg Rule. I own a home at 1317 North N Street, presently building a home at 1332 North N Street, investing what I think is a fair amount of money into this city. I am against this change in ordinance or change in zoning. The fact of the matter is we have an issue with drainage as it is. Pervious to impervious area is pretty strict in the codes now. To allow more building on a small lot, most of our lots are 5,000 to 7,000 square feet with a maximum density as it is. To allow more, it's only going to create and perpetuate the problem. There are plenty of homes now that have the AUDs on them, or excuse me, ADUs on them, and it's not a matter of not allowing our elderly or others to come live with us. It's a matter of, can we charge them to do that? I wouldn't charge my mother-in-law, my mother, to come live with me. Sure, let her live in a house or an auxiliary unit if I have one. Parking, whole nother problem. As it is now, we're required 2 off-street parking units per property. What happens if you add another dwelling unit to the property? Are we going to be required to have 4? It's not going to happen. There's no room for it. A lot of the homes in the city don't even have off-street parking. People are parking in the street as it is, and you can never change that. You can't require somebody to put a parking space where there is no space. The reason I had to move and buy this new property and invest in a city was because I bought a trailer, a beautiful Airstream I put on my property. It's in the driveway. It was in code violation. I didn't know that. Subsequently, I found a property that could handle it. I'm fortunate enough to be able to buy that property and move forward. ADUs are not a good idea. It's not going to increase the benefit for anybody other than those that are wishing to get a financial gain out of it. So I'm against it, and I hope you guys will really think long and hard about this. I know Commissioner Hardy and I had a long conversation when he was running. He stopped by my house. I believed in everything he said, and he was for the city and moving forward, keeping it a small neighborhood. It's a diverse community. I mean, come on, anybody and everybody's welcome, at least as far as I'm concerned. But I don't think this is the right direction we should be going in, and I hope you guys will stay the course and listen to what we have to say. Thank you.
Claire Miller? Did she leave? Claire Miller? Tammy Panza? ADU. I support allowing ADU with approval by appropriate board, P&Z or HRPB, as big as allow appropriate plan for parking and is appropriate to architecture. Amy Cabsinel? Oh, sorry. Followed by Michael Flackfox.
Good evening. Thanks for having us. My name is Amy Capsinel. I live at 20 Harvard Drive in College Park. I'm opposed to the recent efforts that would allow ADUs in single-family residential neighborhoods. The impact of this type of blanket change to the city zoning would be tremendous. Infrastructure, environmental impact, and expenses. As importantly, it would significantly change the quality of life for residents who purposely purchase homes in a single family neighborhood and negatively impact the property values. Other than ADUs being in vogue, and we know that they're mentioned very often in the Times and other places, it's unclear to me exactly what Lake Worth specific problems were being addressed during the June 25th meeting. Granny cottages are a great buzzword, but I'm sure that a small percentages of ADUs would be used for aging in place. And honestly, there should be other mechanisms to allow for non-rental units for seniors and other family members. As I see this, in addition to the items mentioned before, the change would also lead to a proliferation of short-term rentals. Short-term rentals are already not being well enforced in Lake Worth Beach. Finally, it seems that Lake Worth Beach staff have their plates full. We hear that pretty regularly, and that the efforts to ask them to research this could be better spent on other things. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Flackfox, followed by Greg Richter.
Good night, Madam Mayor. I'll start with some good news from the Lake Worth Beach welcomers. But now on a serious note, Madam Mayor, July 16th is a very significant day for me. And you know, you were one of the first people I spoke to 2 years ago when I was diagnosed with early onset dementia. My husband and I and my family, we've been very lucky and we're blessed by being in this city. But in furtherance of what Yolanda Vasquez said about ADUs, I'm very lucky to have the money for special treatment. Without it, I'll die. And it won't be kind. And I'm talking to you tonight, not as a realtor, investor, as a businessman, as a nurse. This date, 4 years ago, we had an agonizing conversation in your kitchen about ADUs or about the care of one of your loved ones. This is going to affect everybody. And I would curse anybody in this room to remember this date when they're in a nursing home and they can't get proper care. And there's $1 billion industry emerging out of nursing home abuse claims. I would like you all to think about that before you make any decision. And this is also a property rights issue, which will attract the attention of another national organization that you don't want to see. I like to come here and talk about good news, but now I can speak plainly. As a former nurse, as a person living with a neurological disorder that the future's uncertain, if I can't stay in my home with help, I won't stay at all. I'll go to Oregon, I'll go to Brussels, and you know what happens there. You do, right, Madam Mayor? Okay? The ADUs are actually an advancement in thought. People know what my politics are. People know how fortunate we've been. But ADUs just make sense on a very local level for people to be able to care for loved ones, to have intergenerational families. I recall 25 years ago seeing an article in the Sun Sentinel. I do remember some things, not everything, but some things, that the Cuban migration to South Florida changed the whole housing market because new home developers were actually requiring, to have in-law flats and things like that. That is family values. So I'd like you to consider that, and I'd like anyone in this room tonight with the chronic case of NIMBYism, good for them. I'm glad they can have an address like that. But I hope that July 16th doesn't occur to them one day when they're getting beat up in a nursing home or maltreated.
Greg Richter, followed by Alex Schultz. Greg Richter?
Hello.
Hello.
Back door. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for this meeting tonight. Look, I live, 1202 South Palmway, here in Lake Worth, and I'm just here. I bought into a single-family neighborhood. I love the neighborhood I live in, South Palm Park. I saw a lot of people from the north, so I'm glad I came tonight to someone from the south side of town is here. I'm just really opposed to this. I just think I think the intentions are good, but I think there's some consequences that could be bad that I don't think we're looking at. And I think there's other ways to address density here that are sitting right in front of us. As I look on South Federal Highway and I see all this empty land that's being taxed at an unimproved rate, where if we can figure out how we can get people to come in and develop housing there and work a solution for workforce housing in these places, a mixed use workforce housing. Came from Fairfax County, Virginia, and we successfully did that and put hundreds of thousands of units out there like this, so it can be done. The second thing is, if we want to support our downtown, we want to get people in our downtown, we need a hotel on this side of the bridge. And I don't know if I've only been here, and I don't care if it's a Marriott or a Golf View. I really don't care, but we need a hotel. That's what's going to get the foot traffic into downtown Lake Worth. So, interesting plan. I'm dead set against this. This is not the way to go. And I just think there's so many alternatives right out in front of us that we should go after them. Thank you all very much.
Alex Schultz. They wrote on here. Against it, it's Alex Schultz, 612 2nd Avenue South. Against it, more drug dealer activity, more prostitution, and shopping carts. Dog feces, furniture on the corner, litter, less space for groundwater. Anna Maria Windish Hunt, followed by Suzanne Cabrera.
She's here. We gotta get
Anna Maria?
Yep, she's coming.
So it'll be Anna Maria, Suzanne, and then followed by L. Shank.
Hello.
You can
Can
push
you
that
hear
down.
me?
You can pull that down.
Good evening and hi to everybody out there. They wanted to trip me up because they're against, I am for. Okay, Let's call it what it really is. It's a granny flat. Let's put the humanity back into family. I know in this modern age, we're sort of disjointed. We're not as close as we used to be. We contact each other via telephone rather than face to face. But everyone here has had visitors come from up north, and where are they going to stay? We don't have the hotels. And the reality is, the granny flats, how many people will really be able to afford to build one? 5 people? And you're opposed to this whole issue? I want density. I want business downtown. I want to see this town thrive. When I came here, we came here one evening on a Monday night. We needed coffee, and I thought maybe Lakewood would have a coffee shop. It did. We sat downtown, and I said to my husband at the time, listen to this. There was live music coming from several areas. There's none anymore but one place. So we haven't really, I know people have been here earlier and said we have grown. Well, we stopped growing, and now we're at a place where we need to start growing again. And so I am for the granny flats because I don't think there's going to be that many. And you have places that you can actually, the code, you know, you want to build something, you have to go through city and get approved. And there are people here that do have housing for other people, and they're not registered. It's okay with me. I don't really care.
Thank you. Suzanne Cabrera, followed by L. Schenk.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Cabrera with the Housing Leadership Council, 2101 Vista Parkway, West Palm Beach. And we were created by the Economic Council, a nonprofit, Chambers of Commerce, basically to make sure that housing isn't an impediment to economic growth. And I can tell you from being in this business for, 30 years now, ADUs have always been solid housing policy. It's a really good thing to look at. And it's something that's accepted nationwide, and there's so many misconceptions about it that I've heard tonight. It's very sustainable, for example. I mean, if you want to make your community more sustainable, this is one way to do it. It doesn't lower property values. And I think I've heard so much tonight that just begs for more study and facts, not emotion in this. And I think economically, your town, you're trying to get artists here, you have a lot of retail, you have people that really need this type of housing. It's really important because it's a safe, affordable option to live. I was kind of disturbed by some of the characterizations tonight, like places for those people. I really hate that kind of characterization. When I first started out, I decided to be
Quiet in the chambers, please. Quiet in the, quiet in the chambers.
It's stated. I was taking notes, but
Quiet
in
in the
any
chambers,
case, it's something that I decided to work in nonprofit. So especially early in my career, that was a really good option for me. I lived above somebody's garage. It was an older couple. I looked out for them. They looked out for me, and I really was able to make a very sustainable situation. And I think hearing about how there's going to be alcoholics and brothels and everything, as I said, the emotion kind of really gets to me because I think this needs to be based on fact. I understand tonight is really about whether they can move ahead and study it, and I think it's important if you get funding from housing from Florida,
Thank you very
part
much.
of the Florida Housing Coalition. I lost a little time. You're required to do it by statute, consider this housing option. So I just urge you to take a better look. It's something that deserves a closer study.
Thank you. L, are you L? L Shank? Sorry, is that you?
Hi. Mayor, Commissioners, thank you for giving me the opportunity to say a few words. I'm not going to delay you already. On the second I heard of this on June 17th at a neighborhood association meeting, I wrote you a detailed letter, which you received. I'm not going to reiterate that. I do have to say a few things. I bought here in a single family neighborhood because that's what I wanted to be in. You're calling them accessory dwelling units, granny flats. I call them BYR, backyard rentals. I have all sympathy with affordable housing. I've helped people get it, young families that can't afford it. This is not the solution to affordable housing. It doesn't address the rents. And if you look on the internet anywhere, you'll see the prices here are very high. People are renting out Airbnbs. They're also renting out transient apartments in the season. It will not address affordable housing. You know what needs to be done to address that. What I'm saying is, however, someone spoke about the elderly in nursing homes. And I have situations where I've had to help people with the elderly and dealing with situations with caregivers. There's no reason to have a separate house to deal with a sick or an elderly relative. You can, if you have an illegal ADU, then simply get a variance. That's number one. Number two, you can also add an addition, which many people, you add an addition to the house with a bath. They can even have a separate entrance. You don't need a separate rental unit. And what I've seen in all the advertisements and so forth, I see that people are renting these out in season. They're renting for astronomical rents. There's no affordability. And to be honest, I really want you to think seriously that you are rezoning this entire city, every neighborhood. Please think about that, and please save our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Mike Allison? Mike Allison?
He's in the hall. Give him a
No, he's brown.
There
Hello, Michael Allison, 1232 South Palm Way, also from the south end of town. You know, the premise of this does sound good. Is the mic on?
Yeah.
Okay, the premise does sound good. You know, we're talking about relatives, family. I think that sounds great. But, you know, given the history of Lake Worth, I think we need to be very careful with this. I mean, I live on the south end of town, and every time I go anywhere, I drive by tons of affordable housing. In fact, my friends in West Palm and other cities, you know, I talked about this with some just overall Lake Worth issues over the years, and the image that we have is not always very positive. I think we need to be aware of that. And, you know, I drive by countless empty parcels of land on South Federal. There's been no development on South Federal for years. Like, you know, that land can be developed. We can put affordable housing. Workforce housing can certainly be developed in Lake Worth on empty parcels of land that we already have. And I think we need to do a better job of presenting the neighborhoods we have that have affordable housing and have these flats already in the backyards. Our neighborhoods do not present well to people that live outside of town. And I think we need to take care of what we have first before we embark on this endeavor of adding more square footage, more parking problems, drainage problems, everything else that could possibly go with it. Let's take care of what we have first. Let's take care of what we already have. Thank you.
Do we have any more comment cards?
No, Madam Mayor, that's it.
No more than 84? No, just kidding. Go pass those down. Lebanon City Attorney, how would you like us to proceed based on?
Looking, I think, based on your comments at your last meeting, where there was a gentleman's, since you weren't present, gentleman's agreement, otherwise I said gentleman's and lady agreement reached that wouldn't spend more than 30 minutes. You may want to ask each commissioner to speak for a certain period of time, whether that's 3, 4, or 5 minutes. I think pick a time, and then ask the clerk to set the timer.
Commissioner Robinson?
With the
well, you have to tell me what the timer is.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I was at the
4 minutes?
last meeting, and I don't think there was quite agreement on limiting the conversation tonight. And I think that it's with the
I'm sorry, we'll just one at a time and let Commissioner Robinson speak.
with the involvement of the community and all the comments tonight, I think this deserves another workshop. Well, because you don't want to hear facts, or you don't want to spend the time to make an important decision. Please, to ignore an idea is ignorant, in my opinion. Nobody's interested in change for change's sake. We all heard tonight that we want to assume the worst. The involvement tonight was good, but I see no reason in we're not going to make it, this is on the agenda for discussion only, which means no vote. So I would want to continue to another workshop and allow staff to come back with answers that have been reasonably brought up tonight. So I hope that isn't the last time I get to speak tonight.
Commissioner Hardy?
I don't actually want to take the floor at this time, but what I'll say is I'm okay with limiting discussion to keep it under 30 minutes to 5.5 minutes per commissioner. That brings us under 30. I think that's a reasonable way to approach this.
That's fine. I'm fine with that, as long as it's 30 minutes. That's what was instructed at the last meeting, so anyone else have anything?
We go back over the minutes.
I appreciate everyone's.
There was no instruction to limit it to 30 minutes. There was one desire to do that, but no vote on that.
Understood. It was, my understanding is that to avoid going to another workshop, since you already had a workshop, you, the three commissioners that were here agreed to advance it to this meeting, provided that there was no more than 30 minutes of discussion, which is your normal rule. And then there was also obviously you had public comment for an hour, so that would have exceeded the 30 minutes all by itself. So that's why they're making the suggestion to limit your comments to 30 minutes tonight and make a decision within 30 minutes. And whatever that decision is, if it's to go back to another workshop, to pass a motion to direct staff one way or the other, but again, if your motion is to go back to another workshop, I don't know that that's out of order, but it doesn't seem to be in accordance with the last workshop that when I watched it.
Commissioner Robinson?
Well, again, there were questions raised tonight that staff can come back and give us facts and consideration. This is an important decision that certainly wouldn't. Why would it limit us just to one workshop? We've heard from the public for and against, interesting comments against, and some misinformation, in fact. And I think staff deserves to come back with answers and actually an explanation of why this wasn't really on the agenda when we had the land development regulations. So I think it's important enough that if we're ready to make a decision tonight, I think it's in haste and not.
I was under the impression that a decision was tried to be made at the last meeting that I was absent for.
Correct.
What I saw in the video was that it was asked, and the attorney that was there present, I think Commissioner Hardy, you asked if you could vote on it, but there wasn't a consensus there. So I don't see now that the fact that we're all here convened, I don't see what the problem is. Commissioner Hardy?
I'll just make a motion and look for a second to limit discussion and debate to 5.5 minutes per commissioner. That's something you can do under Robert's rules that would keep us under 30 minutes of discussion. I think that's a reasonable way to handle this
7
issue.
minutes in.
We already
Right, but
we already burned 8
I
minutes.
tried to start that at the very beginning.
We already burned
but
8 minutes.
Can we do that so that we each speak no longer than 5 minutes 30 seconds?
That's what I said. I was great with that.
Is
So you
that a
wanna
second?
You make the motion. I can't make the second.
I've made under our rules.
I've got a motion. Do I have a second on the 5 minutes?
Second.
Second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Opposed.
So motion carries. Hold on one second. We still have rules, and it's a regular meeting, not a workshop. Okay, keep that in mind. The motion carries 3-2. Thank you. Now we'll move on to the conversation. So everyone's know that you have Vice Mayor
Point of
Pro
order.
Tem.
We've already burned 8 of those 30 minutes.
Well, we're going to start. We're starting fresh now, just so everyone's on the same page and no one feels slighted.
We should have been on the same page 8 minutes ago.
I agree with you, sir. But you know what? I'm running this meeting, so here we go.
Yeah, you're
Ready?
right. Here we go.
Here we go. All right. Commissioner Robinson?
Well, I consider this really much to do about very limited opportunity. This is an opportunity for people who want to do this to do it. And certainly if you don't want to do it, nobody's going to finance something that isn't affordable in their eyes. I'm in favor of ADUs with restrictions to protect the neighbors and the neighborhood. I think it would be appropriate to
Quiet in the
require.
chambers, please. Sorry, Commissioner. I was trying to quiet it down for you.
Thank you. And, I'd appreciate the understanding that I want to do what's best for the entire city. This is an opportunity for the entire city to participate in what could be affordable housing, which means that it could make housing affordable to the homesteaded property. I'm thinking that we should limit, if we're going to, I'm in favor of ADUs. I think the limiting it to homesteaded property would be reasonable. Limiting it to one bedroom would be reasonable. Requiring a 6-month lease and no less would be reasonable. And we can put, conditions that
Yes.
that it's not going to be a rampant construction and change the neighborhoods. So I have said that.
Okay, thank you.
It's a property right. We're talking about property rights.
Okay.
If nobody else is going to talk,
Vice
I'm
Mayor,
going
did
to
you
talk.
want to weigh in?
Is this our 5 minutes?
Is this our 5
This is
minutes?
our 5
We get
minutes.
5 minutes too, even though we didn't get a whole other meeting?
I'm at 3. If he's finished, I can stop the clock.
I'll take 5 minutes
5
real
minutes.
quick.
Go ahead.
First of all, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, especially District 3. Thank you for coming out. My mother lived in my ADU till she passed. I did not rent it to my mother. Issues, I am voting no. Issues, I am voting no on. I'll quickly try to make them all. Parking, parking, parking. I hear daily about Lake Worth doesn't have a parking study. We don't have enough parking going on in certain districts, but we're building with 1.5 parking. I don't understand that half a car, but we do it all over city. If we want to talk about something, let's talk about that parking. Hold on, I got to go back to my right notes. Sober homes, parking, Airbnbs, safety. I support Airbnbs, but at some point we need to look at it. There's been some confusion on both sides. We support Airbnbs. However, Tallahassee has taken away our right to control Airbnbs. So you have to be careful what your neighborhoods turn into. Again, Airbnbs take great care of their property. However, they are not your neighbors. I'd much rather have a single family neighborhood. Again, single family neighborhoods. You bought into that single family neighborhood knowing exactly what you got. If you have an Airbnb, that's great. If you have an ADU, that's great. If you have something that can be an ADU and you put your granny in it, that's cool. When you try to rent it out, you're going to have to bring it up to code, and code is going to cost you anywhere between $30,000 to $100,000, depending on what you're doing. Not everybody can afford it. But we allow ADUs all over the city. So again, you bought into a neighborhood that either allowed an ADU or didn't, and you knew what you were buying into. Funding. I have a big problem with subsidizing developers and people. I mean, you bought your home. You paid for your home. We all did. And at the end of the day, nobody subsidized it. So why are we subsidizing it now? Affordability.
Wasn't proposed.
Excuse me.
Quiet, please. One at a time.
Affordability. We have affordability in the city of Lake Worth. We're one of the poorest cities. I don't think we have a problem, affordability. We have a sustainability. We have a lot of substandard housing. Let us fix the problems we have. We've been here for 8 years now. We've been busting butt
You can see it. You ask anybody why they moved to Lake Worth in the last 8 years, it's because all the work that we've been doing. If you ask anybody that lived here before 8 years, they're like, oh my God, look what happened. And it's not us, it's us. It's we the people. It's the village that we live in. It's each and every one of you taking value in your community. So again, I thank you for being here. It doesn't matter what side you're on, I get it. But there is misconceptions on both sides, and I have a problem moving forward at this time until we fix all the other problems. We have a lot of issues going on, and let's fix the other issues. And affordable housing, we can build affordable units downtown, behind Paul's on the Avenue. We can put in small rental space, small sellable space. We can put small retail space, because obviously we can't rent those large spaces downtown. Let's put some small spaces in and give them some competition. And then you don't have a season anymore. I used to be a merchant downtown. I'm still a merchant in the city. We're seasonal. Let's fix something that we can do now that will change the season, because we need people working, living, walking in our downtown. We need additional parking in our downtown, and we need to look at some kind of parking study for the entire city. When you come home and you live a block or two from downtown, you should be able to park in your area with a parking sticker, some kind of plan. We're looking at that now. So you as a resident, you come home after 6 o'clock with groceries, you can park close to your house. You know, we live in the downtown because we embrace it. It's walkable, it's livable. However, we need to fix some of those problems. So tonight, I'm a no.
I would have to say what he said. And basically to piggyback when you were talking about, one of the ways that we've made the improvements that we have in recent years is that we've all talked to one another and listened to one another. You know what I mean? We haven't painted broad strokes across the top and said, you all must follow. We've come together in a group and we've talked and we've listened. So I appreciate your bringing this issue very thoughtfully and with a presentation to this. And I understand that we have challenges, but I don't want us to forget some of the things that we addressed from the arguments of affordable housing. Okay? La Jolla went in, right? A Street, you see that beautiful new project going up on A Street? All the other projects throughout the city. Market Rate, Lake Worth Road across from Lake Osborne, Phase 1, Phase 2. I mean, there's projects happening everywhere, and we've been very conscious about that. I bought into a single-family neighborhood to be in a single-family neighborhood, right? I'm going to buy my next house shortly in a single-family neighborhood to be in a single-family neighborhood. And guess what? I will be taking care of my dad, because my dad's selling his house up north and moving down to live with me. So I get it. You know what I mean? I understand this whole thing. I really, really do. And I understand the ability to, for people to make money when times are hard. I get that. But what I didn't understand was where this whole thing came from now. I think, Mr. Murata, you were quoted in a newspaper today that I read the paper saying, it seems like a solution in search of a problem. Is kind of how I feel. We've been making really good strides in those areas that were mentioned tonight. South Federal Highway. All those empty pieces of land, investing in the projects that are coming in, looking at downtown, good rentals, healthy, nice, whole rentals. I talked with a couple of old Lake Worth PD officers about this when I got back into town. And by the way, I wasn't out of town because I wanted to miss a meeting. I was out of town because I went to the U.S. Conference of Mayors to present on behalf of the city in Hawaii. Yeah.
It was booked a year ago.
And it was booked a year ago where I was a keynote speaker, and we won. But so anyway, that was why I wasn't here. And I just really wanted to make sure that, we think about these changes. There was a decision quite a few years ago when we were talking about making all the single family neighborhoods able to house businesses. Do you remember that? Without parking requirements, that was one of the efforts that was being pushed at the time, was that any single family residential neighborhood could have a business operating out of it, and they would be allowed to have a shingle hang out. We already went, and it sort of went in the very similar fashion that this was going to, in reference to being able to change it. It is going to change. There are serious problems with parking in many residential neighborhoods. There are serious problems with emergency vehicles in other residential neighborhoods. ADUs are already allowed. And when it comes to the health of someone or whatever, or having help inside a house to help with someone, there are special concessions that can be made, as well as county and tax forms that can be filled out to get assistance in regards to making those ADUs compliable and compatible to your health and family situation, including outside help. So there are many ways that we can massage this. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't look at this in the future in regards to tweaking some of the ADU laws that we have on effect. But putting a broad stroke against the entire city, and I think Ms. Silverblatt said 38%. All right, so remember, when we talk about these comparisons in my brain, when we talk about this idea, my dad sent me the article and said, look, honey, I'm in the newspaper. He showed me the AARP article that was in the New York Times about ADUs and seniors living in the backyards of their children, laughing at me at the time and saying, I'm going to be in your backyard. And I said, anytime, Pop. So whatever you do, you're coming here. And also, I'm not going to rent it out to my dad. He's going to live with me. But so I understand the need here, but I think, again, we're painting a broad stroke for something that doesn't need that painting right now. But the police officers, when I was talking to them, said we had a huge problem with the accessory dwelling units back in the day. And I said, why? And he said, well, that was where we had the MS-13 and we had a bunch of problems. Half of the, and I'm not being disrespectful to the woman who came up and said the things, but a lot of the arrests that were made in regards to the crime organizations and the distribution of said drugs came from a lot of single-family neighborhoods that were, I'm sorry, not single-family neighborhoods. They were mixed use, but had a lot of AD units in which they were from. That was just one comment that was made, and that's not all, and it's not a blanket view. Like I said, I think that this needs to be looked at further down the road. I am not willing at all to change the flavor of our city and our single-family neighborhoods to allow for this at all. Okay, do we have a motion?
Excuse me, I haven't taken the floor.
I'm sorry, I usually call based on their light, and I didn't see a light on, so I thought they were refraining from speaking. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful.
I'd like to hear everyone speak before I.
You're up.
Do we have any time left?
I'll speak last.
You guys don't have a choice. You can either not speak, or put your light on and speak, or not speak and leave your light off.
Okay. I'll wait until the clerk finishes.
We're
the time.
5:30.
Okay.
If
So-
you go the full time, it'll
Yeah.
come back to 5:30.
That's fine. I first learned about this issue because there's a lady who is a historic preservationist who was building one for her mother, and she just thought it was silly that she couldn't put a kitchen in it. Because when you put a kitchen in an accessory structure, which we allow accessory structures in every residential zoning district, but we do not allow accessory structures to be accessory dwellings in every residential zoning district, because a dwelling is something that has a kitchen in it and a bathroom, and a dwelling is something that you can live in independently. So she was building this accessory structure, and she was frustrated that she couldn't put a kitchen in it, because that meant that her mother wouldn't be able to have the independence that she would have liked her mother to have while living nearby. And so she gave me an article about accessory dwelling units from the ARP. And again, at that time, hadn't read anything about it. I actually thought it was kind of weird and quirky, but this is Lake Worth and, what have you. And since then, other people came to me with this issue, and I thought it was kind of interesting. And then I read about it. And I read about other cities of all sorts of big cities, small cities, poor cities, rich cities, cities with transit, cities that don't have much transit, city with rental issues, huge incentives to abuse them, cities that don't. And many of them went in this direction. And then, again, I started to actually see the units that existed in the city, and this is an important thing. One of the reasons why I really consider this to be a sort of a low-hanging fruit, was because the city is already replete with accessory dwellings, and the people who founded the town developed the town in a pattern that allowed for accessory dwellings, and that's why we have so many of them already. And at some point, the city went back on that development pattern and said that the way the city was initially developed is not the way that they would, those people at that time would like the city to be. They rezoned the city to disallow them on 75% of the city's residential land. And I thought that was kind of strange. And the other thing is, in this city, I have heard many things about the kind of city we do not want to be. And I have heard repeatedly, we don't want to be Delray. We don't want to be Boynton Beach. We don't want to be West Palm, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, etc. We want to be the best version of Lake Worth. And oftentimes that's said when people don't like to see density concentrated into large multi-story apartment buildings or condominiums in and around the downtown. And I'm reminded of the fact that, for example, the Lucerne building, which I consider to be a fantastic building, it could be better, but it's a fantastic building. That building was controversial when it was built. And there are people still today who say, never, never again, another Lucerne, right? And so I said, my gosh, well, if people don't want to see density that comes in the form of the Lucerne, well, why don't we just allow density in the way that the people who originally made the city provided for it, which is in the way of these accessory dwellings. And if people say that they don't want to be like Delaware or another city and they want to be the best version of themselves, well, how could these people object to allowing something that the founders of the city thought was perfectly fine and acceptable for the city? And that was how I came to the idea of allowing accessory dwellings, because it's not something that we haven't done before. It's not something that does exist in these communities. It's something that we used to do, and it's something that exists in almost every historic district in the city. And so I really thought that this wouldn't be as controversial as it would be. In addition to that, there has been some discussion. How much time do I have left, Madam Clerk? There's been some discussion that, for example, I hid this motive or intention from the voters, and I had to address that today because there's actual video evidence of me talking about this at a debate. It's like on the internet, you can see it, and there were people in the audience. Some of those people are here in this room right now. And in addition to that, on my official campaign page, which is public for everyone, I posted about this on January 30th in the heat of the campaign. And when people asked me about how I could potentially, if I were to get back in, what could I do to improve the city, I was very keen to say at their doors, I'm really thinking about this. This is something that I think is really important. Other people brought it to me. It's in conformative with what the city is. And when I had the chance to say it, I said it, and so I felt that this is in keeping with the character of the city because they exist already. I felt that this helps us solve a problem because, in my opinion, additional density is needed. It's been said that we don't want to subsidize development, but Commissioner Amoroso sat here and voted on an incentive package for the mid that was over $1.5 million. It was over $1.5 million. Was the excuse me?
One at a time.
No.
Two different things.
One at a time.
But he said he didn't want to subsidize
Two different things.
housing or subsidizing. We've subsidized these things before. We gave the mid a 10-year partial tax abatement. We gave them all sorts of accelerated improvements in and around that area, and we gave them actual proceeds. Okay, and so I just felt that this was an issue that was in keeping with the way that the city had originally developed. It allows us to stay like ourselves and not be like other cities. But if people are saying that they would like to see that density concentrated in the form of multi-story mixed-use apartment buildings on corridors, and if they don't feel that that would change the nature of the city, by golly, I'm all for that. That's something I've actually been outspokenly for a long time. So I appreciate people who came here to participate in the democratic process, whether you're for or against. That's what petitions are for. So.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, since our workshop, I've had some time to reflect on Commissioner Hardy's initiative here and why he's trying to do it. While I don't support it, I do want to, applaud you for your continued emphasis on trying to help us with density. We all agree that we need the density. We all agree that we need to grow our middle class. Okay. But frankly, I've kind of run some numbers, and when I look at our taxable value as far as our tax base is concerned, I think about, what would it cost to build an ADU, and how many ADUs would it take to actually make a difference as far as our tax base was concerned. We'd have to have thousands and thousands and thousands of these ADUs to make a dent in our tax base. And I don't know that would really, at the end of the day, solve our long-term root issues of growing the middle class and density, because obviously we're not going to get thousands of ADUs. So with that said, again, affordable housing, I keep hearing affordable housing. If we have more affordable housing than you can shake a stick at, we need to figure out how to grow that middle class. How do we attract young professionals into this city? And it maybe I'll even throw the word incentivize out there just so I can fill the rest of the sentence, but incentivize them to want to come in and look at some of these properties that are clearly fixer-uppers that are obsolete. Okay, your point about the city was built around the concept of ADUs. That very well may be true, But I think we'd all have to take a step back, and one of the cool things about planning for your future is you need to know what your history is about. So you have a basis, or some sort of a baseline to start with. Well, I'll give you one example of the planning that went into place 80 years ago, 90 years ago in the city of Lake Worth. They were platting 25-foot lots that made up the majority of our downtown. And I would say to you, in 1925, cars were not commonplace. Cars were not commonplace. But what happened in a post-World War II era, these properties conveniently turned into rentals in many cases because the folks that were given them or whatever, because of the land deal they did, they wouldn't live in them anymore. They became rentals. It was a cottage industry, pardon the pun, and folks just took the money out of these properties for years and years and years. But nonetheless, what happened was cars became more prevalent. So now you have one car, maybe in the 50s. Then when you get into the 60s and 70s, there was 2 cars per family. And now, like one of the gentlemen said, you got kids, teenagers, 3 or 4 kids, they all have to have a car. So we have serious parking problems to begin with. To add ADUs would clearly exacerbate the parking problem. So while I applaud your interest in helping with the density, I think it would be in all our best interest, and I mean all of us, to come up with some creative ways to find out what we can do to build a toolbox, if you will, of tools to grow our middle class in this community, to get that density that we need, to get those folks that could come here with a disposable income that can walk downtown and spend it. That's what we really need to focus on. And then there may come a time in the future where we can come back and revisit this, where this may be appropriate. But I think this isn't appropriate at this time. And having said that, I move that I'll make a motion that we respectfully ask staff to stand down on this issue and not exert any more effort or time examining the issue of ADUs until further notice.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I'd like.
Sorry,
I
I'm
did
sorry,
have the light.
Robinson.
I just, want for all those people that think executive orders are a little disturbing. The President of the United States on June 25th signed an executive order titled Executive Order Establishing White House Council on Eliminating Regulatory Barriers to Affordable Housing. So I really think that's interesting in today's world and our discussion tonight. The order would create a council staffed with representatives from a multitude of federal agencies and several other federal officials that would reduce and streamline. Am I over time?
No, go ahead.
How many more seconds do I
You have a minute,
before
26
democracy
seconds.
takes its place and you're not allowed to speak?
That is really condescending.
Point of order, Commissioner Robinson, please.
Okay. Where was I? Federal officials that would reduce and streamline statutory, regulatory, and administrative burdens at all levels that inhibit the development of affordable housing. I'm very interested in developing South Federal Highway. I would.
Point of order. We're off point.
He's
was going to.
His time that he did not use according to the city clerk. He didn't finish his full 5 minutes.
Is that time off my time, or
no? Because the 30 minutes
well,
comes regardless.
Apparently we're getting pretty touchy here. I'm interested in the development of housing on Federal Highway, and I wonder whether a compromise of not allowing ADUs anywhere in the South Palm area, and whether they would be really interested in allowing more density that's allowed now. I look forward to some changes in the regulations to allow for development on South Federal Highway. And I'm hoping that the community down there on both sides of Federal Highway
Is that a motion on the
look forward
floor?
to it.
And a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Mr. Robinson, did you vote?
Well, no, I'm not interested in closing off this conversation, but it's okay. So I vote no.
No. Okay, motion carries 3-2. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to take a brief recess, and we'll be right back.
strange that issues
Stop it.
are limited.
I want to mute it, but
Madam Mayor, it's 8:46.
All right, if everyone would please find their seats. Everyone, please find your seats. We are live. Find your seats.
All right, go ahead. What do we got, Madam Mayor?
All right, we're going to resume this Tuesday, July 16th, regular city commission meeting. We're moving on to item 12A, a discussion regarding, we've got all of these discussions. Discussion regarding the use of plastics in the city brought forward by the Vice Mayor and Commissioner Hardy.
Yes, Madam Mayor. I brought this forward. You've heard me talk about it before. Because we have not physically come up with a way to put things on the agenda yet. We were having that conversation later in the month or in August. I'm asking tonight for a consensus to have staff move forward with putting together some thoughts and ideas based on other ordinances. Tonight I have for you Orlando's, South Palm Beach, North Palm Beach, I'm sorry, Orlando, Delray. They've all passed different ordinances on single-use straws, plastic bags, styrofoam. We have heard from our educational piece of our in-house recycle. She's been coming to the first Friday nights downtown. She's putting some great packages together. I'm just asking tonight, this is for your information, any thoughts and ideas, if you could get it to staff, but I'm asking tonight for a consensus to go ahead and move forward with some kind of a package.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I would support that, Madam Mayor. I just would ask, I'm sure you've seen St. Petersburg, Pinellas County. They've got some stuff, cool stuff over there too.
Yeah.
I don't know how we define best practices in terms of how many best practices we're going to examine, but I would definitely focus on the state of Florida, coastal cities in the state of Florida, and see what we're doing.
Yeah,
and with maybe a dabbling of other communities around the country. But I saw some pretty interesting stuff. I think at the end of the day, this is going to be more of an educational piece, more an encouragement and incentive type thing on the businesses. I don't know that we could ever get to the point where we can actually impose strict regulations that preclude this. But I think if we set the table properly and put the proper incentives in place, I think there's a good chance that most reasonable people will be willing to come along and do what's right.
Agreed. And through staff, we've already talked to Cheney Brothers, Cisco, people that offer options to recycling products. Madam Mayor, you've seen some of them in my location, and it can start as more of an education process. Most of the cities are all doing ordinances, but then giving a time period for people to use up their stock, to educate them on a better use. And I just think as we become more sustainable, that we can get ahead of it.
Mr. Robinson?
I brought back from the city of Ormond Beach, from Lucky's Supermarket, some paper bags.
Paper bags for me.
And I'm wondering if we couldn't just briefly, like for a short period of time, whatever financially works, to put on recycling information and incentives on paper bags, and have Publix work with us to start with paper bags as well.
Vice Mayor?
And that's part of the research too, is working with other organizations to either fund bags, recycled bags, paper bags, for the city of Lake Worth. I've talked to Mark about it, and we've talked to some different people that might be able to fund it for us. We have OUC that came up with some great products when they first started years ago as giveaways. So I think that we can go above and beyond in that situation too.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem?
No, just that, I suspect that organizations such as Publix are probably deep into the research and development of alternatives. So if we can reach out to them and see where they are with what they intend to do. Okay.
I'm comfortable with bringing, with talking about it in regards to the city as a whole, like regards to the city operation and what we do and what we use and whatnot, and doing that. I'm not comfortable with mandating across the board to every business owner and whatever at this point. It's an educational process, a transition type of process to see if they can. And I also wanted to say there, I know in the state of New York, they have a process, and I wanted to get more information on it, and I was unable to contact their city, one of the commissions that I know is very progressive in regards to it. But they put a fee structure in place in regards to when you go into the grocery store, you automatically you bring your own bag, and if you want a bag, you pay
A nickel.
5
That'll
cents,
be- that'll be
5
part of it.
cents for it, or whatever, to help them subsidize changing over to new materials that are more costly in their operation. I wouldn't want to, I'm just saying, I'm all for this, but I wouldn't want to jeopardize a business by causing them to incur more expenses and things like that. And I think there's got to be some sort of transition period and whatnot about it. So that's what I would like to discuss.
Yes, first of all, I want to thank staff for bringing this about. I asked about this in June of last year, so also there was some litigation going on at the time. It wasn't, Publix wasn't involved in the litigation, but 7-Eleven was involved in the litigation. They were suing the city of Coral Gables, which had banned plastic bags and styrofoam under state law. City of Coral Gables and all cities in the state of Florida were preempted from doing that, and basically Coral Gables dared someone to sue them. Coral Gables obviously has a tax base that is a little larger than ours. Go Canes, that was where I lived for 5 years before and after college.
Shameless plug.
5 national championships. What was that?
Shameless plug.
Hey, one at a time.
Greatest college football team of all time.
No
2001.
college rivalry on the Giants.
But I wanted to see that process play out. Now that said, there's been some interesting developments, right? So basically, there was a plastic straw, and like a ban on plastic straw bans that was considered in the legislature. It was passed, and Governor DeSantis basically vetoed it. Now that doesn't affect, in my understanding, the litigation between Coral Gables and 7-Eleven, which is still churning its way through the courts. Is it in the district court now?
I haven't looked at that in a while, but I'll check.
Okay. But the fact is, there are cities around us that have done this. There are cities whose residents are like filled with business people. Town of Palm Beach. And, how many business people are among those residents there? I think they understand the problems that come with adding cost on people through regulation. But they saw it as a necessity because they're a coastal community, and they wanted to make sure that they protect part of what makes Florida South Florida in particular, really, really wonderful place. So I'm for a ban on plastic bags, plastic straws, and other single-use plastics that people tend to get and discard, that tend to get in the stormwater system, that tend to be mistaken by wildlife in our waters for other things. I think that's helpful. And I think this might be a big step for us, but we're going to look back on this 10, 15 years later and say, how did it take us this long? Because I think it really makes sense. So I would like to see staff give us something after studying what other cities have done that is defensible and that will achieve some of the objectives that Commissioner Omarosa and I have expressed both in public and in private.
I miss the paper bags in the grocery stores that we grew up with.
Public still has them.
Yes, they do.
But you have to ask for them.
You have to ask. They sometimes don't.
I bring my own now.
I always bring my own.
But I just remember the whole thing was they got rid of those and the paper straws because we were killing the trees.
Right.
So we thought we were doing the right thing back then by going to plastic because we were killing the trees, and now we're switching it back around. But I will tell you, those cardboard straws are. Sorry. All right.
And I just wanted to comment too. I bring my own bags to the store, and for years I would have them in the car and I forget. Now I make sure that I have them, and that's why one of the things in this program I'd like to see a reusable bag that says Lake Worth Beach, that has one of our partners on it, that they can pay for it or help us pay for it, that we give out to our residents to encourage them to carry them to the stores and have them in the cars with them. And also Orlando had styrofoam. When we do cleanups, one of the biggest pickups is styrofoam. So I want to try to make sure that we have, and it can start with an educational piece with the styrofoam, or look at Orlando's and see exactly what they're doing. I'm thinking that most restaurants in the city of Lake Worth, the downtown, will embrace it if they have a clear messaging of options from the people they're already buying from. I'm more concerned with the fast food restaurants and the places that go through a lot of styrofoam, that are giving away a lot of plastic, that how do we re-educate them? So thank you.
We have to make the people that make those nice silver glasses that keep the ice really cold and keep things really warm to give us more of those replaceable straws, because my husband keeps putting them in the dishwasher and melting them.
Well, and that's one, you know, our representative, our recycle representative gives out at Evening on the Avenue. We all got one, a metal reusable straw. And I carry it in the bag, and the other day I'm like, oh, I have a straw. But again, you have to have them, you have to remember to use them. And
Well, see, that's why I like the thing about New York that I mentioned earlier, because nothing's turned them around faster than when they went into that grocery store. Because how many times have I have got 8 bags in the back of my car, and how many times have I walked out of my car into the grocery store without the bags? You got to remember them. Let me tell you something. The second they start charging you for bags, you'll remember those bags.
and Mark and I talked about, and we heard a little bit at the conference of mayors. It's just a straw. It's just a plastic bag. It's just one styrofoam container. It's just one tree. But if we're all doing it, and, you know, what was it? You know, 1 trillion trees, and 1 trillion trees sound like a lot. But if we do 200 trees by 2020, and everybody's doing 200 trees by 2020 across America, it's 1 trillion trees. Same thing. If everybody's doing a straw, if everybody's doing plastic bag, eventually those little environmental things become something large and can be doable. So, thank you.
Yeah, actually, I won't go. You know, ethicists call that the problem of inconsequentialism. One person does something, it's inconsequential. But if you can add up all these people doing the same thing, it becomes really, really impactful. The one thing I'll say is Sarasota put a wrinkle in their ordinance about plastic bags and styrofoam and plastic straws, and it basically went like this. On city-owned property, vendors there, lessees there couldn't distribute or use plastic, single-use plastics. So while the state law told them that they can't just blanket regulate businesses in that way, they said, well, it's our property, we can make this a condition of using our property, and they got around the law that way. If we find that it's not legally defensible to do a plastic bag ban, even though we might be able to ban plastic straws, right? If we find it's not legally defensible to do that, we might just say, look, at the beach, which we own, if we ever do anything related to food trucks anywhere in the city, street painting festival, all of those vendors anywhere in the city, Day of the Dead, all those things that happen at the Hatch, we have the ability at our parks, whether it's Sunset Ridge or whether it's Bryant Park, Reggae Fest, or any, you know, we have the ability to tell these vendors, no plastic, at least on our turf. So that's something that I think we should consider as well.
That's what I mentioned, I believe, at the beginning of the meeting, was saying that it's within the city control and city property. Yes. Okay. Well, I think we have consensus then to bring this back.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to discussion about breweries and distilleries in downtown area brought forward by Commissioner Hardy.
So, yeah, my understanding.
I'm sorry. Tammy Panza had a card on the last one. We didn't have a vote on it, but I will read her card. I support the ban of plastics and supporting green products as an oceanfront city.
The reason why I put this on the agenda is that based on conversation with staff, my understanding is that we have I wouldn't call it a quirk because most cities do it this way, but basically, for example, if the brewery on South H Street were to try to locate itself and do the same exact thing, for example, on Lake or Lucerne Avenue, that sort of thing wouldn't be allowed. But for example, if he had like a kitchen or some sort of food service aspect to it, it would be allowed because our downtown zoning doesn't do that. And what staff, I guess I'm calling it, you know, the Anheuser-Busch question, right? So like if Anheuser-Busch or any of these other large beer companies came to the city and said, we want to do a brewery, you know, we don't want to serve any food, but we want to do a brewery in the downtown. Could we do it? Look at our code. We go, no. Right, but we would probably, you know, arrange some things to accommodate an Anheuser-Busch or some large person coming here to do something impactful. What I think, though, is that we should just allow that anyway. If the gentleman who owns the brewery that's named after him, I don't know if I can name him, but if Dave Matthews wanted to put his brewery on Lake and Lucerne just the way that it is, I don't think it would detract from anything. And I think that we should have a conversation about whether or not we find that acceptable. And I'm wondering how my colleagues feel about that and if we can make that change to our code. There are some people in the community who looked at that and said, oh, that's kind of dumb. It's not dumb. It's thoughtful. It's the way other cities have done this. But I do think that we could be more liberal and open in our zoning laws generally, and I think this is a case for that.
I think that I've heard that argument before, too, and I don't have any problems. I think that the current law we have in place, guys, is it's if you have a restaurant / brewery, like you can have an actual, like something like down in Key West, what was the name of that place? Hammerheads or whatever it was. It has like, they have the big silver thing inside the restaurant, and the restaurant, oh, so Bruzies or whatever else too, right? They have those. You can have that kind of function in the downtown. But now the problem is the distribution, because the manufacturers, the shipping and the distribution of it. Is that the problem for the zoning?
And
or the actual mechanical?
I believe it is. William and I looked through this, and I believe that if we have a restaurant that is serving food and they make their own adult beverages there for sale within the restaurant, that would be allowed downtown currently, because that wouldn't be the principal use as a brewery, distillery, winery, etc. If a place like Matthews would want to go in downtown, we currently don't allow it. On the map, I know it's a little hard to see, but the areas we do allow it is out here west of 95 in our Park of Commerce. That we allowed out there, and it's allowed in the artisanal industrial zone where Dave Matthews is located currently. So we do allow them right there. If you wanted to move them into the downtown area, that would be a change in the regulations to allow a standalone brewery, distillery, or winery downtown.
So the again, back to the reasoning for that, because I remember we had the similar controversy with artists who wanted to do clay firing with the kilns and stuff like that. That was also only allowed in there. I mean, is the brewery thing? Is there a hazard risk to brewing beer or making wine? I know that there is to making spirits.
There always are some risks, and if you have a use in a downtown that's currently allowed, there are hazards with anything. There's a hazard with running a restaurant, having fryers downtown. I mean, there's always risk of things being a hazard. I think we can, and there are rules and regulations around to protect that. I don't see them as being a use or a threat in a downtown that we'd be concerned about. If you were producing a toxic chemical downtown, I'd have a concern with that. If you were doing a business that had a large potential to release something that would cause damage to a large population, I'd have a problem with that. I don't.
I'd have a problem with that anywhere in the city.
Yeah, I mean, you think about the number of people today that even get those homebrew kits, and you can do them in your basement. You're doing them in your home. The industry has become very safe. Are there risks? Yes, but I don't think it's a disastrous one that would be a major concern for us to stop it from being downtown.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem?
I'm not even sure how to make this statement or question, but I'm kind of curious as to what the genesis of this discussion is to begin with. Do we have folks out there that are looking to do something like this in the downtown? I think that would be helpful. I mean, to me, just to have the theoretical conversation about this is, we're just adding more to staff time and, resources. Just curious as to what.
Mark, do you have an answer to that? Commissioner Hardy?
Yeah. So first thing, I have a friend who lives in town who's an architect. We discussed this issue. I thought it was kind of dumb, and my general feeling is that cities tend to overregulate land use to begin with. And if someone were to want to come into the downtown, we would have like an additional hurdle for them to do things. They wouldn't be able to do it immediately. They'd have to get a rezoning. They'd have to get us to change, the zoning that we allowed there, and that's just like another complication. I don't like complications with land use. And the other thing is, so I know a gentleman who is a partner in a brewery in Delray Beach. He is considering choosing the city, and as he would consider choosing the city, as anyone would consider choosing the city, I want people to have options. Like, that's kind of my general philosophy about land use, is that I want people to have options about things that don't matter. And to me, I don't care if our downtown allows breweries that don't have a restaurant. Like, all of a sudden you add a restaurant, it's like, allowed. You don't have a restaurant, it's not allowed. I don't see that as a legitimate end of government to regulate that sort of thing. So that's kind of the genesis of it.
I'd be willing to move the oh, sorry, you got more comments. I'm saying, are we gonna do this here now, or do we want to bring it back as another item, because it was for discussion as whether or not we bring it back? That was the item. That was the agenda item. It was discussion again. Discuss. Vice Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, I guess if we already allow them, theoretically, well, not theoretically, they're allowed if they're going to serve food, as long as they don't just package and ship it out the back door. My question is this issue simply resolved, or could this issue simply be dealt with if it came to us with a variance?
Process.
Can't get a
We don't
variance.
have
can't
to
do
use
it.
it. It's not on use.
Go ahead.
no.
But what, keep in mind how this was discussed a little bit prior, is that the downtown, we're trying to keep it activated, pedestrian friendly, and I think the real item that needs to be discussed is whether it's consumption on premises or just package sales, or
Correct.
does it necessarily mean if you are a brewery or a distillery that you actually have package sales or consumption on premises? It could just be a place where you manufacture it and it gets distributed out. So Mark and I've been talking about it. I think it'd be very easy for us to make some modifications to allow distilleries and breweries that have a requirement to be consumption on premises, and you can have package sales and maybe limit the size of them. We wouldn't want one to overwhelm the downtown, and that's actually not that complicated of a change.
What about, where does their large-scale distribution happen?
That's in the Park of Commerce, and you can have that in Artisanal Industrial District.
So could said place, if their physical manufacturing was inside the downtown building, how would they get their large-scale packaging out to restaurants, bars, other
That's what we're
places?
saying. We would probably limit the size of the microbrewery or distillery. If it were in downtown, you could have it be much bigger if it were Artisanal Industrial or in the Park of Commerce. And we can bring back examples of what sizes we would feel would be appropriate downtown, and we can give that to you for consideration. The initial thought was that as long as it's less than 7,500 square feet, which is our sort of threshold for a conditional use, that might be an appropriate limit of that would be the largest a microbrewery or a distillery could be with consumption on premises and package sales.
Then why wouldn't we have brought this conversation up back when Matthews was looking to?
It wasn't presented to us at that time. We were trying to have the microbreweries, because downtown, we've incrementally made little changes to allow things downtown, and it seems that we're able to, versus doing broad major changes to downtown, we've incrementally brought things forward. And so this is probably an incremental change that is the evolution of how Lake Worth is moving forward. Because when we did the LDRs originally 7.5 years ago, microbreweries were not like the latest greatest thing, and they were considered, they did have some nuisance-based activities, but we're now 7 years into the future now, and they have become very popular, and maybe a time to open and look at them as being a standalone activity.
Vice Mayor?
I just want staff to make sure that they research, as we attend meetings across America, most of the time we view these in different cities, and they're always in industrial areas. They're always no food permitted. They have to cater the food in. I don't have a problem having a conversation. I am concerned. I'd like to go back to Matthews and see, because if I remember right, they were looking for downtown and they were told they couldn't do downtown. So that could have been, like the mayor said, an option or a conversation we had at that time. However, again, most of the places are in those areas because they want to distribute. They want the big trucks to pull in. If we look at doing something like this, we need to make sure that we don't at any point allow that to happen, because I could easily see, alleyways being full of trucks of kegs pulling out and, whatever it may be. We need to be very careful in how we write it, but I'd like to look at other cities and states across America, because there's a reason why everybody does it in industrial areas or, not in their downtowns, so.
And it's hard to say that though when you have all the big trucks coming into town to drop off the kegs of things that are going to the restaurants.
And that's already a problem.
I know.
So, and are there other cities that have allowed, and what does it look like in their downtowns?
Yeah, I mean, I think it deserves further discussion. City Manager, did you have?
After your conversation,
I'm sorry.
is a logistics issue. If y'all decide to move forward with this, do we have a group of LDR changes and updates coming forward that this would be tagged into, so it doesn't run on a separate process, so there's no misunderstanding from the commission?
Yeah, I would prefer if we could get into a rhythm or pattern of collecting together these LDR amendments, build them, vet them, if you will, and then bring forward the approval process in a grouping like we did in 2018. I know it was a bit of a voluminous change, and it was a collection of items that had been sitting around, but in process for a year and a half. I think that's a great way to do it. We work through, we deal through the issues, we get them all together, we package them up, and we bring forward an LDR amendment, and here's the 6, 7, 10 issues we want to deal with at that time. And yes, we do have a list currently.
There's one that's coming up, and what's the schedule for it tentatively?
We're going to do it tomorrow.
Point of order.
Finish the shopping cart first.
Shopping carts got in the way.
Some items that were being worked on by Max DeCoste, and his second anniversary of passing away has just passed us. And so there are some things we want to get to you fairly soon. So we've talked about having at least a twice a year cycle for LDR changes. And so this one could probably come in the next cycle, but not the one we're working on right now.
So that would be when?
Like 6 months from now.
Okay, and I wanted somebody to say that answer. Thank you. That was painful. 6 months from now is kind of what we're looking for, to bring this back with a group of other items so that y'all are clear on that. If y'all have an issue with that, you need to say that now. But
I'm fine with it coming back if it pertains to any projects, things that are pending, that the decisions based on that. If there's, someone looking to invest something in it, and they need a decision on it, then I'd be willing to discuss it sooner or later.
the other reason is when we group these kinds of things in these classifications, to staff's point, the advertising, the attorney's time, it becomes more efficient. And so we're looking for those efficiencies. Thank you.
A big part of the amendments we have coming forward are really related to the comprehensive plan we just adopted, and there are some LDR changes that are needed to complement the comp plan we've just done. So that's a portion of what we want to bring forward to you soon.
I think that's in a perfect world scenario. It's sort of like all the information for an agenda will be in by the Thursday prior to that agenda, so there shouldn't be any need for any last minute changes or reordering.
Yes.
So I'd like to say that the 2 times a year that you want to do that sounds great, but if there's that last minute agenda item that needs to get put in there because it's a time rush for a project or a potential big project, then we should know that too. Vice Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. And this is slightly off point, but it lines up with the idea of, grouping things together at the appropriate time. I have no idea. I know that, we often talk about staff being, really strapped in terms of time. There's so many things that we need to do or are doing, and there's just a finite number of people and resources that we have to get it done. And we're constantly grappling with the prioritization of the things that have to be done, and that seems like it gets reprioritized on a regular basis. One thing I'd like to learn as we start talking about getting into these pre-meetings or workshops to have discussions on whether we're going to advance ideas is to find out how much time is actually spent by staff researching an item like this. So we have a better, does it take 15 minutes? Does it take 10 hours? Does it take 5 days? Does it take 2 weeks? Does it take 6 people a week and a half? These are things that we need to know. So when we bring things forward, we know before we bring forward what additional new burden we're placing on staff. The LDR thing, it's been years and years in its development, and we're still tweaking it. So how much bandwidth is being taken up by that? And I just think we need to be judicial in, what we add on to their workload. But in order to do so, I think we need to have some type of working understanding of what effort is required to vet any issue, generally speaking.
Because we're not voting on it, we had one public comment card. I believe we need to review the current businesses that are not allowed on or off Dixie. Why are some of these not allowed rather than, it's rather random? It's a 116 North Wall Street. Okay. All right, so I think we've got to go ahead and bring this back. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mayor.
And now we're going to move on to our next section on the agenda, which is
the Walt Show. Oh,
Walt and Brian, come on down.
Brian King.
We've got a consent agenda first up.
So
and that's
moved.
Second.
By Commissioner Hardy. You guys are so fast. Moved by Commissioner Hardy, seconded by the Vice Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor say so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Public hearing, item 1. City Attorney, you'll have to read this ordinance. You weren't ready for me, were you?
I was not ready for
I
was not ready for an electric ordinance.
Did everybody notice his new tan, by the way?
Did you see that?
What's that?
The city attorney's tan. Does he look good today or what?
Smiling.
He's embarrassed.
Smiling.
Did I pull it apart for you? I've
I
been
don't
grabbing
know.
his papers all night.
I don't know what I did.
Just grab an ordinance.
Just grab any ordinance and read it away.
This would be ordinance number 2019-07, reconstituting the Electric Utility Advisory Board.
What I'm looking for. Where did it go? Ah,
Thank you,
finally.
Mark.
There we go. Sorry about that. Ordinance number 2019 of the City of Lake Worth Beach, repealing and replacing
Hold on one second.
Article 20 of Chapter 2 of the Code of Ordinances to reconstitute the city's electric utility advisory board, providing for severability, conflicts, codification, and providing an effective date. Sorry about that.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any public comment cards? 13C. I would like the current job description of the EUAB to remain as is, with particular emphasis about public information, education, and sharing.
The next one? Okay.
We've got a motion on the table in a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And now moving on to new business. Intend to participate in the potential Florida Municipal Power Solar Project 2 at a participation rate of up to 30 megawatts of output.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second, okay. We've got Justin Hoysrat, followed by Tammy Panza.
Time earlier. Again, Justin Hoysrad, representing the Florida solar industry today. Just want to piggyback on some of the comments that were made today. Commissioner Hardy made regarding the inconsequential activism. That said one person may not make an impact, but if hundreds, thousands, or millions, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, it makes a significant impact on the straws issue. It's amazing how the comment regarding that policy equates right back to the solar industry. And sadly, one person did it, and then 80 plus more followed, and then it was met with a ban. So it's just unfortunate. So I do want to be clear that the Florida solar industry does support solar energy in all forms, whether it's utility owned, community owned, third party owned, and of course, customer owned. So therefore, participation in the Florida Solar Project is great as long as it's competitively sourced and goes through a good quality public process. But it doesn't justify a prohibition on solar energy for homeowners, as we currently have at this point. But to be clear, the Florida industry, as I ran out of time earlier, the Florida solar industry is hopeful that this commission is open to and initiates a fair and public stakeholder process by which the Electric Utility Advisory Board can enact with stakeholders and other individuals to repeal and replace the approved interconnection agreement with a fair tiered interconnection agreement that restores customers' private property rights and the ability for our members to conduct business in this great city. So thank you so much.
And I just want you to know that I allowed that comment to go on, even though that was really not. Normally, if someone speaks and they're not speaking to just the direct issue at hand and refers to another item on an agenda or not on an agenda, I usually stop them, but I appreciate your being here and I appreciate your input on that.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure that one thing, oh, hold on, Tammy Panza said, thank you very much. I support solar and any other energy production that is clean, was the other comment card. I just want to make sure that when we all, just in regards to what was said, because it was off the agenda item, there were two words mentioned, prohibition and ban, neither of which have gone into effect in regards to the solar program here in the city of Lake Worth Beach, and we will be having an upcoming meeting on that. We were just fixing some regulations, and we're going to be vetting that before the Electric Utility Advisory Board, and the public will have input on that, and the commission will have a final say on that. So again, I just don't want to propagate through the evening misinformation that there is a prohibition or a ban on homeowner solar use. Thank you. City Manager, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I appreciate your clarification on that mischaracterization. It's a moratorium, which is not a ban. That this 30 megawatts of output that we're expressing in intent goes along with our current 1.6 megawatts that we have in our own solar field, as well as another 10 megawatts that you've already approved for us to participate in. If you add this up and you take into account that it's a solar, you don't get a full 100% of it, it would account for about 27% of our energy production use in this city. And somebody made the reference earlier that talk to us when we get to 50%. Well, when you add our nuke that we currently have at St. Lucie, which is a clean carbon neutral source.
And which we're obligated to by a former agreement that was made many years ago.
Correct, but it is a non-carbon producing form of energy, along with the 41.6 megawatts that is being accounted for in solar. That's getting us right at 50%, if I'm correct in my numbers. So this city, on behalf of all the owners, which are the customers, you're doing an incredible job in being very progressive in the types of energy in our portfolio that all the users, commercial and residential, and also people outside the city in our service area, the electrons that are being generated. That's a pretty impressive number for us to reach in 2023.
58. Would you mind coming up here?
Yeah,
Sorry, speaking to the microphone.
Brian King,
I just
he's
wanted to
our
introduce for the
power.
record.
I just wanted to make sure you got the right number, Jeremiah. 58% by the end of 2023, December 23.
That's even better.
That's even better.
So when we get to 2023, I want everybody to know that we're going to be over 50%.
58%.
And so we're no slackers when it comes to clean energy or solar, even though people may disagree with some of the steps we're taking to correct and clean up some of our processes and to make them better for everybody. So I just wanted to say that.
Participate in our solar program.
And I want to really compliment staff. They've been bird dogging this, and Ed Liberty, our director, who's not here, he's doing a bang up job.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hardy?
Yeah, the first thing is very, very okay with nearly all forms of carbon neutral energy. And I think, frankly, nationally, we need to be having a conversation about nuclear because it's a source of power that's not intermittent, and yet it's carbon neutral. And so I think that's very important. I'm glad that we have it, and I'm certainly not against this agenda item this evening. The one thing I'll say is to someone who wants to put a panel on their house, a temporary ban is still a ban. Moratorium is a ban that's temporary, and I think that's what the gentleman was referring to. I understand that the context should have come that it was temporary, right? But for people who are trying to get, there are some federal tax incentives that are expiring this year. If they don't get this stuff before the end of the year, the tax incentives go bye-bye. And we've clogged up a huge portion of the year, like a third of it, with this ban, and we didn't even let people know it was going to happen until like a third of the year was already gone, right? And so I understand the gentleman's frustration. He's helped people in the city get solar panels on their house. I do think the context should have been there, that it was temporary, but I think that's what he was trying to say.
How far are we into that ban? 2 months already? Are we in the second month already? It ends in August, so next month.
Yeah. So, all right.
We've got a motion on the floor in a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. City Attorney, did you have a report?
No, ma'am.
City Manager?
Just to remind everybody that on the 23rd, we have 2 meetings going on. One is the EUAB meeting. The other is the workshop on a lot of the things that you guys are actually starting to use, the discussions on how we process items that you want staff to proceed with, and a process for you to bring to your peers for discussion in the public, your concepts and ideas to move forward. And I'm excited for seeing that process work, and I'm grateful for y'all being patient. So that's going to be on the 23rd. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing that we've got our reports, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Second.
There's no second?
All right, everyone has to stay. We've got no motion to adjourn. I've got no second. Come on.
No, Commissioner Amoroso.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Finish out strong, guys. Finish out strong.
Good job. Thank you.
Finish